Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I welcome you to this fourth day post-lunch session talk. Today morning session I began uh, one of the great classics text of Victorian literature, 19th century literature. That's Wuthering Heights. I also gave you an overview. I introduced the characters. I told you a little introduction about the characters and the story, the plot, and all that. And I also said like the certain Victorian values pertaining to this literature. I also defined what actually a Gothic novel is all about, isn't it? So I explained all that little concept. So in this session, let me get into the rest of the characters. I was talking about the characters sketch. I was introducing the characters. Now, after introducing you to characters, now I'm getting into the further important characters. So now I said the novel, the protagonist is Heathcliff. And we have Catherine Ansha, the second important character. And the next is, I was talking about Catherine Ansha, introduced to the reader after her death. Because I told you, when the novel begins, when the novel opens, no, she's not at all there. She's died. She's introduced only through somebody's narration, especially Nelly Dean as such, isn't it? So this is one thing. And now we have through Lockwood's diary. The Lockwood, he documents the events in his diary. Okay, and after that, the most important crucial thing is that how Catherine Ansha, she decided to marry Edgar Linton. She decided to marry Edgar Linton, and it's a rejection of nature and surrender to the culture. So I was telling this important concept. And come back to the Edgar Linton, the next character. So we have done with Heathcliff and Catherine Ansha. Now it is Edgar Linton. Let me talk about Edgar Linton. He resides at Thurstcross Grange, his higher social status. There are two important things. I was telling that in how Thurstcross Grange, it is a very important, a significant place because here the so-called sophisticated people, they do live. Their mannerisms are good. They're well educated, economically stabilized, and everything. Because Edgar Linton belonged to such kind of social status, and he's a neighbor fellow. He belongs to Thurstcross Grange, I told you, and Wuthering Heights, where Heathcliff and Catherine, and then Hindley, and whereas at Thurstcross Grange, here we have Edgar Linton. So he resides at Thurstcross Grange, isn't it? This one thing. And second character, a very important character, that's a Nelly Dean. So she's the main narrator of the novel. She's the main narrator of the novel and a servant to 3 generations of Ansha and 2 of Linton family. She has seen 3 generations of the generations. And she has worked either in Wuthering Heights as well as in Thurstcross Grange. So Nelly Dean, she's a narrator. She was a servant at both the houses. Now, Isabella Linton. Isabella Linton, she's a sister of Edgar Linton. Isabella Linton, she also resides at Thurstcross Grange. And she views Heathcliff so romantically. The moment one day Heathcliff came to see the family members when he visits Thurstcross Grange, and she views Heathcliff so romantically. And she has been fascinated by him. Okay, and then what happens further? Despite of Catherine's warning, and Catherine told many times not to marry Heathcliff, but despite of her infatuation, she became prey. She became victimized. And Heathcliff, he wanted to take a revenge against Edgar Linton because Edgar Linton, he marries Catherine. So here, Isabella, she became a puppet. She became victimized in the novel, and very much abusively treated by Heathcliff. And she treated so abusively by Heathcliff. And she escaped to the London and gives birth to a son called Linton. And she also gave birth to a baby boy, that's a Linton. So this is about Isabella Linton. She's a brother and she's a sister of Edgar Linton, and she is she's a wife of Heathcliff. Okay, that's fine. And we have another character, that's Inlay Ansha. Inlay Ansha is a son of whom? He's a son of the Mr. Ansha and Mrs. Ansha, and he's a brother of Catherine, isn't it? So he's hated for Heathcliff and ruins Anshaw family by drinking and gambling. Whatever the father has accumulated in terms of wealth, money, and all that, Hindley, he completely dwindled everything. It destroys everything, and he got into gambling. He got into the kind of a drunken state of mind, and he completely dwindles the entire property and all that. So that's about Hindley, the brother of Catherine. And we have a Hayton Anshaw, son of Hindley. Hayton is a son of Hindley and the Francis. I told you, Hindley and the Francis, the husband and wife, and Hayton is their only son. And after both the Hindley and the Francis, they died, Nelladine, she brought him up, and gradually he become, he's again fostered by Heathcliff. So after Hindley dies and Francis dies, and Nelly and both the Heathcliff, they take care of Hayton Linton, the boy, and he wanted to take a revenge against Hindley, and he mistreats this boy. The way he was troubled by the Hindley, in the same way he decided to trouble this boy, and not exactly so troubled, but he did not allow the boy to grow in terms of emotionally and mentally, and he did not allow the boy to come up in a social status. So this is another theme related to revenge. And we have a Cathy Linton. Cathy Linton, she's a daughter of Catherine and Edgar. She's a daughter of Catherine and Edgar Linton. So, and then we have a Linton Heathcliff. Linton Heathcliff is a son of Heathcliff and Isabella. Okay, and later on they get married. Both the Linton and the junior Cathy, the daughter of Catherine and Edgar Linton, they get married each other. Who? The Linton and the Cathy, they get married. And the marries Cathy as the father terrifies to direct him, and she asked him to get married, Cathy, so that he can get the property of the entire Tuscas Grange. And after that, when the Linton dies of tuberculosis, and ultimately, she joins with the Hayton, the son of Hindley. So this is the character introduction. 1 minute. So now, hope you are able to understand the character such a way, because this novel is a very, very complex in terms of the character, portrayal, character sketch or character gallery. And somehow, let me also give you another little brief introduction about the family members. I told you there are two different families. One is Wuthering Heights, another one Tuscas Grange. In the Wuthering Heights, who are there? Like Hindley is a member, and his sister, the Catherine, and the Heathcliff as a adopted son to Mr. Anshaw. And whereas in the Tuscas Grange, we have Edgar Linton, we have Isabella Linton, isn't it? And they're the different family members, along with the servants. So there are different entities, different communities here. So let me get into the novel. I just explained the novel because it's a very elaborate, a very voluminous text indeed, even it's a bulky text. So after these characters, I try to give you a holistic picture about the novel, and certainly after that you can get into your materials given by the university, and you understand even more. So what happened? See, this is what. Let me come back once again. Emily Bronte's only novel, published in 1847 under the pseudonym called Elise Bell. So this novel, Emily Bronte's only novel, published in 1847 under the pseudonym called Elise Bell. This is point number one. And then it challenged the strict Victorian ideals of the day regarding religious hypocrisy, morality, social classes, and gender inequalities. The four important concepts that the novel deals with. What are they? The entire novel, it challenges the strict Victorian ideals. It challenges a strict Victorian ideals of the day regarding in terms of religious hypocrisy. There's a hypocrisy in terms of religion, and the morality, and the social classes, and the gender inequality. These four important concepts are so rampant during the time of Victorian society. Now, come back to the story here. The story is like that. Mr. Larkwood seeks reigns at Tuscas Grange in a Yorkshire. He wanted to stay at Tuscas Grange. This is how the novel starts. So this person, our character, that is Mr. Lockwood, he seeks rents at Tuscas Grange now because he wanted to. Because at present, when the novel opens, nobody lives in the house. Nobody lives in the house. Okay, and all the generations have died. All the generations have died, and because when the novel started, Edgar Linton died, and even Catherine died, and the whole family, nobody there, and he has been occupied. Heathcliff is occupied because Edgar Linton and the Catherine's daughter Kathy gets married with Heathcliff's son, that is Linton. Linton, the junior Linton, he gets married, and after they died, both the Edgar Linton and the Catherine, and through the son, he occupied the Tuscas Grange. And after that, the daughter-in-law, the Kathy, she comes to this house, the Wuthering Heights. Okay, Wuthering Heights, and so the house become empty. So this tenant, Mr. Lockwood, he wanted to visit to the house. He wanted to take that house as a rent for rent. So what happened? He visits his landlord, Heathcliff, who lives in a remote moorland farmhouse called Wuthering Heights. So where he's going to visit, he's going to visit his landlord, Heathcliff, who lives in a remote moorland farmhouse, Wuthering Heights. So here, Heathcliff is living in this house. And here, he also sees that Miss Kathy, she's a widow, because the junior Linton, he died, and she's a widow. The Kathy, she's a widow, the daughter of both Edgar Linton and the Catherine. So she's a widow, and there is a young man. He speaks as if he's a servant. He is none other than he's a Hayton and Shaw. He's a son of Hindley. The Hindley son, he is living in the house almost like a servant. And whereas the junior Kathy, she's a widow now, because the small Linton, he's died of a tuberculosis. He's a son of son of Heathcliff. So he died of tuberculosis, and this is what happens. And Lockwood had a nightmare in his sleep. So he went over there to seek for the rent. And that day, he could not meet his masters because the master was not at all there. He went over there and he sleeps in the house. And he sees the ghostly Catherine trying to enter through the windows. So he had an experience that the ghostly Catherine, she entered from the house. I mean, she's knocking at the door. Let me in, and all that. And whereas he's completely threatened, he worries about it. And so he tries to, Catherine trying to enter through the window, and this is the nightmare that this man had. That is Mr. Lockwood. And gradually, what happened? So Heathcliff escorts Lockwood to the Tuscas Grange, and he narrates to the Heathcliff, saying that this is what I experienced. This is what I experienced. And so Mr. Lockwood, Mr. Heathcliff, he scolds him that who did allow you to enter in this house, in this room especially, because the room belongs to Catherine. The room belongs to Catherine. So this is what happens. And after that, he takes him to Tuscas Grange, because that is a rented house. It's the house is vacant now, and he wants to go there. So what happened? The Grange housekeeper, Nelladine, tells him the story of the family. Much before she tells the family story, and Mr. Lockwood, he asked Nelladine, I had been to Wuthering Heights. I went to Wuthering Heights, and there I had a terrific, experience. There, a girl, somebody, through the window, they were peeping into, and they wanted to let her inside. So there is something strange in the house. So why don't you tell me the entire thing? So this is what Mr. Lockwood requests Nelladine. So let me take a few lines from the text. I just read the words from the novel. See, this is what. Much before he gets into Wuthering Heights, he saw everywhere the names are written over there. How? Over and over, Catherine Anshaw, Catherine Heathcliff, Catherine Anshaw, and Catherine Heathcliff. So everywhere the name is written. So he was worried, and he asked Nelladine to tell what all happened during the course of her time in Wuthering Heights, and she narrates the whole thing. How does she narrate the whole thing? She says like this. One summer, the master made a trip to Liverpool. That the master, Mr. Hansha, he made a trip to Liverpool. On Liverpool ಹೋಗಿರ್ತಾನೆ ನನ್ನ ಮಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಅಂತ. She started telling the story about all the narration. So here the Nelladine, she became a second narrator in the novel. The whole novel, the course of the novel takes place only through the story. Only through the story, because in the chapter 1 to 4, it is just reality. What we see. But whereas chapter 4 onwards, it is just a story within a story, a play within a play. So here, Nelly Dean, she narrates the entire story. How does she narrate it? One summer, the master made a trip to Liverpool. Our master, he made a trip to Liverpool, walking 60 miles each way. He had promised gift for the children. He promised his children, that is the Hindley and the Catherine. How does he promise them? He says that they're waiting to his return on the evening. My father would bring something. So both the kids are waiting. And what happens here? And Mr. Hansha, he comes with his gift. And he opens it. And here what happens? You must take it as a gift of God. He tells to his children, both the Catherine and the Hindley, saying that, dear children, you have to accept. You have to accept this boy as a what? As a gift of God. Accept him as a gift of God. Though it's a dark as if it come from the devil. The boy looks like a devil, but dear children, you accept him. He's a nice boy. I found him starving in the Liverpool streets. He's talking about the Heathcliff. So this is what Nelly Dean, she's narrating to the story to the Mr. Lockwood, the new tenant. ಮನೆ ಬಾಡಿಗೆಗೆ ಬಂದಂತ ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ, ಮಿಸ್ಟರ್ ಲಾಕ್ವುಡ್ ಅನ್ನೋ ಬಾಡಿಗೆ ಬಂದಂತ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗೆ, ಅವನು ಯಾವಾಗ ಉದ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಹೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಒಂದು ಅನುಭವವನ್ನ ಪಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾನೋ, ಆ ಒಂದು ಘೋಸ್ಟ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಯಾಥರಿನ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವನು ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ, ಯಾರದೆಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ನೆಲೆಡಿನ್ ಒಬ್ಬ ಸರ್ವೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಂತ ಅವಳು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ, ಶಿ ನರೇಟ್ಸ್ ದ ಹೋಲ್ ಥಿಂಗ್. This is what happens ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. And he's saying that I found him starving in the Liverpool in the streets. He can't talk. So he cannot talk English. Nobody knew to whom he belonged. That means he's an orphan boy. And I could not live him as I found him. I saw this boy in the Liverpool, but I could not live him as it is. I couldn't live with the boy as it is. So please, you accept him. He was named after Heathcliff. Now on the street, my hudugange, he asks his son and daughter. The son is a Hindley and the daughter Catherine and the Hindley. And I suggest you, please give the boy a name. Yes, I'm teaching you Wuthering Heights, and hope you are able to follow the story, known session. It's a tough time to listen the stories, but try your best to listen it, and hope you are getting the story, how its narration goes on. Hope you are getting it. Yes, fine. And what happened? He was named Heathcliff after a son who had died as a baby, because as well as possible, even Mr. Hansha lost a baby boy. So he replaced him. So are we not happy? He and Kathy became a great friends afterwards. So Nelly Dean, she's telling to Lockwood. So gradually, ಅವನು ಮನೆ ಬಂದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಮನೇಲಿದ್ದಂತ ಹಿಂಡ್ಲೆ ಅವನು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ತುಂಬಾ rude person. He's a little very rude and kind of a hated boy. Whereas both the Catherine and the Heathcliff, they become together. They became great friends, and he was the master of favorites. And always Mr. Hansha likes the boy very much. The master likes the boy very much, and Hindley hated him, felt he had stolen his father's love and always treated him badly. And Hindley always mistreats the boy because his father stopped loving the Hindley. And he said that here he's taking all the love and affection, he's stealing all the love and affection from the father. So he's developed a kind of a hatred. So this is what the journey starts, the novel starts. And gradually, what happens? And Nelly is starting narrating the story. On a trip to the Liverpool, Mr. Hanshaw adopts this orphan named Heathcliff. Hindley, Catherine, and they're the children. And Hindley feels Heathcliff takes his father's love, affection, and jealous of him, and become very jealous of him because he's taking all the love and affection from the father. Catherine and Heathcliff, they became friends and spent hours together in the mood, and they closer, and they became very good friends. What happens here? So Catherine and Heathcliff, they became closest friends and they spends us together in the moor. Moor ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಾಡು, ಅರಣ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರಿಬ್ರು ಜೊತೆ ಜೊತೆ ಆಗಿ ಓಡಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಒಡನಾಟ ಎಷ್ಟು ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬೆಳೆಯುತ್ತಂದ್ರೆ ದೇ ಬಿಕಮ್ ಇನ್ಸಫರಬಲ್, ಒಬ್ರು ಬಿಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲರಾಗದಂತ ಬೆಳೀತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ. Of course, he's an orphan boy, and look at the bondage, that affinity, the bondage. It grows such a way, such an intensely, and they become inseparable. But the question is, these people are this kind of bondage people, and are they become completely forever together, or is there any separations? Let us see further. Are you getting the story? Okay. Your session. Okay, fine, thank you. And coming back to here, this is what happened. So Hindley is sent to university 3 years later. So what happened when Hindley is torturing this Heathcliff, because the father gives a lot of comfortable, lot of the closeness to the boy than Hindley. So he decided that he started developing a kind of a hatred, a malice, and that kind of feelings towards the boy. And the father decided to send the boy to the university. Let him study at the university. So Hindley out of house. So here in the house, only Heathcliff and the servant and the Catherine and the Hansha, the family members. So Hindley is sent to university for further study. And after 3 years, Hansha dies. It's a very pathetic. So this Hansha, the head of the family, he dies. And Hindley has gone for higher education, and he has come back a fine day. After that, let's see how he treats Heathcliff. The real journey starts after that. So now, who is the landlord? Who has become the property owner now? None other than it's a Hindley. He inheritance. He gets a property through inheritance. He gets the property. And Hindley is sent to university 3 years later. Hansha dies, and Hindley becomes the landowner. He's now master of Wuthering Heights. So he's the one and only, the Hindley, the very cruel man, the man who has a lot of vengeance towards Heathcliff, because he's stolen all the love and affection from the father. And a fine day he may also seek for the property, isn't it? But Heathcliff is not in such a mentality. But he also assumes that, and he thinks that Hindley becomes the landowner, the landlord, and he's now the master of Wuthering Heights. Hindley is a master of Wuthering Heights, and he marries a lady called Frances. ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದು ಹುಡುಗಿ ನಾವು ಮದುವೆ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ನು ಕರ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಮನೆಗೆ. ಸೊ ಇವಾಗ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಯಾಥ್ರಿನ್ಗೆ ಒಬ್ಬ ಅತ್ತಿಗೆ ಇರ್ತಾಳೆ, ಅಣ್ಣ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ, Heathcliff, nobody. When the Atge comes, when the sister-in-law comes, and that what the kind of condition during the time of 19th century in London, and the people with this kind of mentality, and no way there is fear. But whereas luckily the Frances is a very nice lady, she's not at all harmful to anyone. But Hindley's misconducts are rampant day by day, day after day, and so and this is what. And then he says that Hindley tells Heathcliff for point, because his target is Heathcliff, none other than. He allows Heathcliff to stay, but only as a servant, and regularly mistreats him. Look, Heathcliff, I allows you in the house only as a servant. If you can be as a servant, you be here. Otherwise, you should just go from the house, leave the house. You cannot be associated in terms of anything with my family and the sister. And he's giving all kind of the compulsions. He has become a big hindrance. He become a lot of problematic to the Heathcliff. And despite of that, he tortures so much so that, and a fine day, when he dies, Heathcliff also decide to mistreat his son, that the Hayton in the same way. It's a rollbacks. He also mistreats his son Hayton. That I tell you further. And what happens? And one day Heathcliff and Catherine, they walk toward the Tuscas Grange. So what happens? Catherine asks Heathcliff, let us go for a walk. Let us go for a trip in the entire mood. So ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಇಬ್ರು ಜೊತೆ ಕೈ ಹಿಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಎಲ್ಲಿಗೆ, ಒಂದು ಮೂಡ್ ಬರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಕಾಡಿರುತ್ತೆ. They go together to walk around the entire places. So one day Heathcliff and Catherine, they walks to the Tuscas Grange. So ಹಾಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಲ್ಲೊಂದು ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮನೆ ಕಾಡ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. There's a big mansion, the big castle they can see. Because it's a very sophisticated house, it's a big castle, the big mansion looks so pompous, ತುಂಬಾ ವೈಭವಿತವಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಮನೆ. So ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, so he saw that they were struck by the house, and they saw this house, and what happens, there to spy on Edgar and Isabella Linton. Inside the house, both the Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton. Hope you're getting the story. Are you aware of? Are you getting the narrations? No, any confusion? You can just drop me a message through comment. So what happened by the time when they crossed through this Tuska's Grange, the neighbor house, inside the house, inside the Tuska's Grange, the family members, that is Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton. Edgar Linton, he's a brother, and Isabella Linton, she's a sister. What they were doing, they were holding a piano and playing with it. And they were dancing, singing song, and they were okay, fine, wonderful. Okay, you said no confusion, stuff, wonderful. So what happened? Both the Edgar Linton and the Isabella Linton, they were playing with guitar, playing with the music, and enjoying, like, singing song and pulling legs one another, because they're in the prime youth, because sister and the brother, that kind of an affinity. And whereas this is the affinity. See here, the people love one another. They enjoy music. They sit together. They read together. They enjoy music. Whereas in the Wuthering Heights, everything is a topsy-turvy. It's a viruddhavagirutte. How it's a topsy-turvy? And Hindley is such that he never want to look at the face of Catherine as well as Heathcliff, and he wants them. So whereas completely love is filled, love entirely celebrates, whereas one side the Ravine celebrates. So these are the two dichotomous, juxtaposed entity we can see in the novel. So further, and they hear the kind of a noise, the music, both Catherine and Heathcliff, and they just jump toward the window and catch out of the window, and they try to step, and they want to listen how they're singing song. The moment Edgar Linton was dancing over there, and Catherine, she was climbing the windows and waving at the dancing, and she couldn't control her laughing and screamed, and she was laughing and laughing and laughing, and she suddenly fell down. And immediately the dogs belonging to the Tuska's Grange, belonging to the Edgar Linton, they came forward and they hurt Catherine, and Catherine screams. And they all come forward and they see that the only daughter of Mr. Hanshaw, the well-educated man, the neighbor, Wuthering Heights properties owner daughter, Catherine, the very beautiful lady on her, and she fell down and she was wounded by the dogs, attacked, and both the Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton and the family members, they all ran towards Catherine, and they hold each other and they take her inside to the house. And they nurture her. Papa, they lulls her and they treats her. They conduct so well. And somewhere, the first time in her life, Catherine, she has come across a wonderful people and who literally loved her. Because the sign of love she did not get over there. Because see, all of a sudden she has got so hurt. Immediately members came forward and they took her inside the house and they treats her. And what about the Heathcliff now? Heathcliff is, he's almost like he's a bit worried, and he stood over there and he was not allowed to get inside because his body language is such that, his mannerisms is such that. What happens here? So they were spying on it, and Edgar Linton and Isabella Linton, they come forward here, and Catherine, she was injured by the Linton's dog, and Catherine, she was influenced by their elegant appearance and gentle manners. This is a very, very important. So ellargu even the gentle mannerisms, on the elegant appearance idre, we all spellbound. Oh my God, look at them, how beautiful are they? Look at the mannerisms, look at the dress code, are they not so fit into the highest aristocracy family? Look at the entire setting and the body language and everything. So here, Catherine, she's influenced by the elegance, appearance of the Edgar Lintons and mannerisms. Edgar seems to be a very sophisticated man. He's a very handsome, and he looks so handsome and well educated and a well polished behavior and completely nurtured themselves. And when she returned to the Wuthering Heights, because I told you, but by that time, Heathcliff was not allowed to get into the Tuska's Grange. And he has come back to Wuthering Heights and told everything. And whereas again, he, beaten black and blue by the Hindley. Hindley tumba torture martane. Oh, allowed you to go to Tuska's Grange. Why did you take my sister over there? What actually happened to her? So he's come forward. And again, Heathcliff was mistreated and ill-treated, and everything happened. And by the time, Heathcliff is tortured so much, and he was literally brutalized, and it's a kind of a traumatic experience to him. And what happens? So when she returns to Wuthering Heights, her appearance and manners are more like a lady. She had a long blonde hair. When she goes to Tuskers Grange, she had a long, lengthy blonde hair. You could have seen all become very short hair with a different hairstyles and elegant with a different attire. Earlier, she wore a coarse attire. Now it's a very elegant, a very sensitized, very elegant attire with a cover on it, shallow on it, and she comes as though she's well mannered and belong to sophisticated. Though she's sophisticated, but when it comes to conduct, it was not such that. ಆ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನ ಇರ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, whereas like Edgar Linton ತರ. So she comes and she returns to Wuthering Heights. Her appearance and manners are more likely like a lady. ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ, ಬಂದೇನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ, Heathcliff was sitting, standing over there, and servants were also there. Heathcliff was sitting over there, and she comes and she stands. I feel to enact this novel more like a play, but it's an excellent novel. And she comes, the way she surrounds Heathcliff, that's very interesting. She comes and she laughs at Heathcliff's appearance. Yen Heathcliff, ninkantiya, look at myself. You look so rude and crude. Heathcliff, you're looking like that. See that? She laughs at Heathcliff's appearance. Heathcliff now on the note and but whereas they were going together and there was an equal bondage, they were one another. But when she comes from the Tuskers Grange, her appearance and body language, mannerisms are completely different. So this is one you have to notify. This is you have to understand, like how societal norms are more important. Social status are more important than your bondage, love, and affection. I think I or you or anyone for that matter. Probably we are not so intellectual enough, or we are not so mature enough to talk about all this. But as much as my knowledge is concerned, here, Edgar Linton, Catherine, she was literally, taunts. Taunts ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಲ್ಲ, ಅಚ್ಚುಚ್ಚು ಮಾತಾಡೋತರ she laughs at Heathcliff's appearance. And Heathcliff, upon Nelly's advice, he also tries to dress up like a gentleman with to impress Catherine with the help of Nelly. ಅವನು ಕೂದೆಲ್ಲ ಸ್ಕ್ಯಾಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. His attire is completely different. He ran towards Nelly because Nelly, she's a motherly figure. Okay, because she's a servant at home. It's an excellent, a very amicable servant. ಪ್ರೀತಿಯಿಂದ ತುಂಬಾ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮಕ್ಕಳೆಲ್ಲ. Because she has come across all the three generations after generations. She has seen Mr. Hanshaw generations and Hindley and Catherine generations, and even their further generations kuda balkirtale. So she's an important character here. So what happened? Heathcliff and Martana, in order to impress Catherine, he also also changes his attires, his hair difference. He also tried to impress with a typical Western elegance attire. And by the time he comes to impress Catherine, her brother, Hindley, he humiliates Heathcliff, and Catherine comforts Heathcliff. Hindley, he rebukes him, scolds him. And why have you, dress up yourself like this? And, he literally chides him, he scolds him. And whereas Catherine, she, comforts Heathcliff not to get hurt. And here, the Hindley's wife, that's a Frances Ansha, she gave birth to the baby boy called Hareton. Hareton and Mobique Janmakaten Matale, she dies. Haru Frances, she dies then. Dies after a few months later. And Catherine and Edgar Linton became friends, lovers, and married. And quite often, once Catherine had been to Tuskers Grange, when she has come back, and Edgar Linton was so impressed by the beauty of Catherine, and he came with the family members, and he proposed Catherine Linton, and and spoke to Hindley, and Hindley gave a signal. He said that yes, he gives his consent. Yes, you can get married, my sister. And here, without further any kind of disturbance, Catherine and Edgar Linton, they become friends and lovers and married. So here now, what happens? Our hero, should we call him as a villain or anti-hero? Often Heathcliff, he's completely in a state of confusion or a muddled state. Then in this kind of state, how will we be happy with? And how Hindley treats him? How does he treat him? And how he'll take up his life further? What's the future course of his life? And everything is unimaginable to Heathcliff. And then Catherine confesses to Nelly that Edgar proposed to marry, and she accepted. because even for Cathy, it is also quite, quite comes in kind of a riddle to understand all of a sudden, because they were such a close to each other, Heathcliff and Catherine. And one day she confesses to Nelladine, because Nelladine, she's a motherly figure. She has to confess her that propose Edgar, Nelladine. One day, Edgar Linton, after had been to Tusker's Grange, he proposed me, Nelladine. He proposed me, and she accepted. Although our love for Edgar not comparable. Sorry, though my love for Edgar is not comparable with that of Heathcliff. Heathcliff is myself Untitled, because I am Heathcliff Untitled. They have submerged in one another, but she can't get married him. What's the reason? That is a riddle which can't be solved. Could be societal norms, because of his, he's not educated like Linton, Edgar Linton, and he's not as born rich as Edgar Linton is. And to her love for Heathcliff, whom she cannot marry because his low status and lack of education. I could not marry him because of the low education, and as well as lack of, low social status, as well as lack of education. On a societal rank could have top parala, as well as he is not educated man like Edgar Linton, so I shouldn't get married him. Outrightly, she rejects the proposal, and she informs to Nelladine. And father, are you getting the story? Yes, fine. And then further, she hopes to use her position, and she still says that, she hopes to use her position as Edgar's wife to raise Heathcliff's standing Heathcliff over here. To raise him. To bring him in a societal as the best person. She tells again. I'll repeat. She tells that I can use as a position of Edgar's wife. I can help Heathcliff to also bring him as a recognized person in a society. So he was talking everything with an Nelladine, and here Heathcliff is standing, nearby, and he's overhearing everything, the conversation between one another. And he also heard the word, it is a degrade for her to get married him. And after all, she uttered a word that it is a degrade for me to get married him, because we belong to different societal class. And then, so what happened? But not how much she loves him, that can't be explained. But how much she loves him, that can't be explained. But she's always there to protect him, nurture him, but not as a to take care of him, to marry him. And he runs away and disappears without a trace. The moment he hears the word that is, it is a degrade for her to get married him, and he decided to go from the house, and he wanted to become a rich man. So that keeps him in mind. What happened? After 3 years, Edgar and Catherine marry and live together at Tusker's Grange, where Catherine enjoys being lady of the manor. After the 3 years of Heathcliff left the place, and here both Edgar and Catherine, they marry each other and live together at Tusker's Grange, and where Catherine enjoys being lady of the manor. She's enjoying. There is no one to disturb them. She's like a lady of the manor. The entire property house, she's the lady. She's the head in that sense. And 6 months later, Heathcliff returns now as a wealthy gentleman. So after 6 months, Heathcliff has come back to the house as a wealthy rich man. By now, he's a rich man. He has accumulated money. He has a property. He has a money and everything. He earns everything, and he has come back. Now we're all there. One side Linton. One side Hindley. He always drinks and gambling, card game, gambling, and he's the whole property is degenerating. So he's one side. And whereas the wife Frances died, and whereas the only son Hayton is a small boy, he's there. And then I think I told you that even so what happened? So here, whereas in the Tusker's Grange, Edgar Linton is there, Catherine is there, and as well as Isabella Linton. Andre Annana attige idale matte tangi and the Anna, and that Edgar Linton, they are there in the house. So he comes to Tusker's Grange. Yaru, our Heathcliff bartane, because he's a rich man now. He want to confront them. But after all, he comes over there. So 6 months later, Heathcliff returns now as a wealthy man, and Edgar's sister Isabella falls in love with Heathcliff and infatuated and infatuated by him, because Heathcliff is also looking a very good looking person, and she has been infatuated by the words and the beauties of Heathcliff, because now he's changed. He's not the old rude Heathcliff. He's completely changed now. So here, Isabella Linton, the sister of Edgar Linton, she's very much inspired by the way he talks and the way his body mannerisms and everything. And by now, there is a fear in both Edgar Linton as well as Catherine. Because he's already such a hard-hearted person. He has come with a purpose. Something certainly he will he became a problematic to them. So somehow they're not happy after once he visited. And what happens here? An arguments between Heathcliff and Catherine. And Catherine, she scolds him. They're like, why have you been here? Why have you visited and all that? And why are you so close with Isabella? Why are you talking to him? Because Catherine, she likes him, loves him, but she doesn't like he's good with Isabella, because she knows that at any point of time Isabella may become a victim. Isabella will certainly become a victim. And then an argument between Heathcliff and Catherine. Upset Catherine locks herself in a room and begins to make herself ill. Every time she locks her room, and she begins to cry and scream, and she became ill. She became completely, totally ill. And she's now pregnant with Edgar's child. By now, she's pregnant with Edgar's child. She's conceived and about to give birth to a child. And Heathcliff gambling with Hindley and teaching Hayton bad habits. I told you it's almost like the practice repeats. The history repeats or the practice repeats. How? Heathcliff gambling with Hindley, because now Hindley has a money with him. Heathcliff has a money with him, and he gambles with Hindley. Hindley because he needs somebody, the partner who has a lot of money. So he gambled with him, and what happened? And he lost all the money to Heathcliff. And by that time, Heathcliff, he tries to command over the house of Wuthering Heights, because because Francis is not all there. When there is no lady, what happens? The house. Look at the system of the house, whether in Indian scenario or in a Western scenario, a lady has to be there in the house. So whereas Hindley, he's a widower now. He lost his wife, and at any point in time, the house may be spoiled. So what happened here? Hitler, he goes and he teaches the bad habits to Hayton. Hindley maganige avanu ketta habits alla heltane, because he takes a revenge, and this is what happens. And Hindley mortgages the farmhouse Heathcliff to pay Hindley's debts, because Hindley had taken money from a lot of people. In order to clear the debts, what happened? He mortgages the property in Heathcliff ke mortgage ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತಾನೆ. So he takes the money, and property has been mortgaged. So that means he has all the rights to grab the property. Heathcliff's intention is to grab the property by fair or foul means, by hook or crook. He has to get the property, isn't it? That's the ultimate thing. So Hindley, he mortgages the property to Heathcliff, and he grabs all the property, and one after another he's trying to acquire the property. And whereas his gambling and the drinking has become extreme, and Hindley is almost going to die. And look at that, what happens. Hindley mortgages a farmhouse to Heathcliff and to pay Hindley's debts. And Heathcliff elopes with Isabella Linton. By now, he's economically stabilized. Who? Economically stabilized? Our character, our hero. That is a anti-hero or villain, whatever we call. So he's economically stabilized, and he elopes with Isabella Linton, because he wanted to take a revenge on both Edgar Linton as well as Hindley. Hindley is almost took revenge, and he about to take a revenge with this person. Who? That is Edgar Linton, by marrying his sister. And what happens? Heathcliff elopes with Isabella Linton and returns to Wuthering Heights. Catherine is dying and gave birth to a daughter, Kathy. And Catherine, she's worried so much because she knows the intentions of Heathcliff. He has come with a purpose. He wanted to destroy the properties of the Wuthering Heights. He wanted to, bring to the wrong path both the Hindley and his son, that's Hayton. Of course, he has become succeed in that. He's literally, decided whatever he's intended to do so, and he has been doing so. And Papa ಇಲ್ಲಿ Catherine ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ, ತುಂಬಾ ಅದನ್ನ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಕೊರಗಿ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ, her health is being deteriorated. So she broods about it. Brood ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಕೊರಗು ಅಂತದ್ದು. She broods about it, and every day, and the health deteriorated. And by now she's pregnant, and she gave a birth to a daughter called Kathy. She's a Catherine. Amma is a Catherine, and Magulu, she's a Kathy, and she gave a birth to a junior Kathy, and she dies. And you know what happens? And further, Isabella gives birth to Linton. Because in the same in the same time, because I told you Ethiopia he married Linton, married Isabella, isn't it? And Isabella gave birth to Linton. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇಸಬೆಲ್ಲಾ ಮತ್ತೆ ಇತ್ಲಿಫ್ಗೆ ಹುಟ್ಟಂತ ಮಗನ ಹೆಸರು ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ, ಇವಳು ಇಸಾಬೆಲ್ಲಾ ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಹೆಸರನ್ನೇ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಅವನು ಇತ್ಲಿಫ್ ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಅಂತ ಅಥವಾ ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಇತ್ಲಿಫ್ ಅಂತ ಕೊಡಲ್ಲ, ಅವನ ಮಗನ ಹೆಸರೇ ಲಿಂಟನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಸೊ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಕನ್ಫ್ಯೂಷನ್. So here, Isabella gave a birth to a baby boy called Linton, and he's a son of Ithlif and Isabella. Don't forget that. I think in terms of the characters, are anyone having a doubt? I mean, are you students having any doubts in terms of characters? Are you getting the narrations? Any confusions? Nothing of that sort, right? I mean, if you're, okay, you're getting it, I believe. Okay, and now Isabella gives birth to a Linton. Because in the beginning, gradually, when you attend this novel, certainly the confusions in terms of relations, characters, they're bound to happen in your mind. And no all clear, so that's fine. So what happened? So Isabella gives birth to a Linton, and Hindley dies 6 months after Catherine. So after 6 months of Catherine died, even Hindley also died. ಉದ್ರಿಂಗ್ ಹೈಟ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಣ್ಣ ತಿರೋಗ್ತಾನೆ, ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಹಿಂಡ್ಲಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತಸ್ಕಸ್ ಗ್ರೆಂಚ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅವನ ತಂಗಿ ದ ಕ್ಯಾಥರಿನ್ ಡೈಸ್. Okay, and there nobody, only Hareton and Heathcliff. And whereas here, who are there? Here the Kathy, the daughter, and the father, Edgar Linton. When Catherine also dies, Edgar Linton health is also deteriorated. Lots of character interlinked with the relations, quite difficult to understand. Okay, named their grandfather's name Linton. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, that's fine. It's there's a family name, but generally when it's a boy, we put the father's side's name. But that's the reason I told you it's a Linton. That's it. Let us not get into any kind of debate about it. So because we know that when it's a boy, it will be father's name is always associated with, isn't it? So what happened here? So Hindley dies after 6 months of Catherine. So the sister died, even the father is also died, and Italy finds himself master of Wuthering Heights. So all is when we are characters. Ahmed, okay, it's a compliment. Thank you very much. See what happened. Here he's a master of Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff is a master of Wuthering Heights, and his intention is to grab even this property too. That is Tuska's Grange, because after Edgar Linton dies, his plan is to make marriage between his son Linton and the junior Kathy, isn't it? And so that he can bring the daughter-in-law to the house and he can grab this property. That's Tuska's Grange. That is his intention. So he wants to be a master of everything. See, when it comes to revenge and all that, when you keep in your mind, the man can get into any extent to do that. I think this is not just a mere imaginary tale, and I think it's something more to do with the actual life story, isn't it? In the novel, there is a lot to discuss about. When you talk about the novel's information, there are nearly 100 pages of notes about it. But I'm so saddened that we are only having 2 hours. Somehow I missed many quotations, family dialogues and all that. But make use of this kind of a capsule information, otherwise a thematic analysis, and ultimately you are the one who reads a lot and you comprehend it and you write for exam point of view. I try to give a justice in terms of the narrations, that I can say that, and a little bit of background too. Hope you understood. And then Kathy becomes a beautiful, high-spirited girl now, because the mother is also a beautiful lady, and this girl Kathy, she has become a very beautiful, high-spirited girl. So both well accurate, and she is very much active, and she's a highly spirited girl. And Edgar learns that his sister Isabella is dying, so he leads to retrieve her son Linton in order to adopt and educate him. Because I told you, even Isabella, she's also going to die. And here the Edgar Linton, he decides to go to Isabella Linton and try to adopt this boy. That is retrieve, in the sense like take control over the boy. that is a Linton, in order to adopt him and educate him. ತನ್ನ ತಂಗಿಯ ಮಗನನ್ನ ಅಡಾಪ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಅವ್ನಿಗೆ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಕೊಡಬೇಕಂತ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಎಡ್ಗರ್ ಲಿಂಟನ್. He decides and he wanted to live to the house, and he goes over there. And junior Kathy, she rides out to the moors to Wuthering Heights and discover that she has not one but two cousins. So one day, when Edgar Linton decides to go to the house and wanted to adopt and give an education, he assumes that, he decides that, and much before that, what happened? This lady, the girl, the high-spirited girl, the Kathy Linton, the Kathy, the junior Kathy, she rides with a horse, and she goes towards the moor, and she goes to Wuthering Heights, and she discovers that, and she has not one but two cousins. ಆಕೆಗೆ ಇಬ್ರು ಕಸಿನ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾಳೆ. ಯಾರಪ್ಪ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಹೆರಿಟನ್, ತನ್ನ ಮಾವನ ಮಾವ, it's a maternal uncle. The Hindley's son, it is Hayton. Hayton is there, because whereas the Hindley is not already there. Hayton is her cousin, and whereas now the Linton in the sense Isabella's son. That means Atteya maga. So here what happens, both the Linton as well as Hayton, they are there anta avಳು ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾಳೆ, and she's very happy that she has two cousins. And now where are we now? We are in a third generation, isn't it? So the novel is in a third generations. And remember, this entire story, it is in a narrations. Idu namge the leading, she describing the entire narration to Lockwood. Lockwood ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಹೌದಾ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾನೆ. ಓ ಹಿಂಗೆಲ್ಲ ಆಯ್ತಾ, ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಪನ್ ಅಂತ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾನೆ. ಸೊ ಲೆಟ್ ಮಿ ಲುಕ್ ಅಟ್ ಸಮ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ಸ್, some have put some quotation. Looks like watching a movie, sir. Okay, when we are fine. I'm glad that you are getting this story, because when I was taught this novel by my own teacher, Mysore University. I'm a student of Mysore University, and the first time we also had a lot of confusions in terms of understanding. But when you get into as a reader, you have to read the novel completely. Certainly, you will understand it. But in terms of characters, hope there are no confusions. Okay, and you are getting it. Let me complete the story. I have 10 minutes. Possible, I'll complete. Otherwise, I keep a little bit for tomorrow. We are almost in the fag end of this novel, because I can't be even hurrying in terms of giving the summary at this, or the thematic analysis. What happens here? I have another 7 to 8 minutes left. Let me see possible. So she understands that she has three cousins. One is a Hayton as well as Linton, and she was quite surprised. And walking in the moors, Nellie and Kathy encounter Heathcliff. Because by the time when Catherine married to Edgar Linton, and invariably, Nellie, who was a servant of Wuthering Heights, she has been to Tuska's Grange. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವಾಗ ಆ ಮನೆ ಹುಡುಗಿ ಕ್ಯಾಥರಿನ್ ತನ್ನ ಗಂಡನ ಮನೆಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಟಸ್ಕಸ್ ಗಂಜ್ ಬರ್ತಾಳೆ, ಅವಾಗ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾಳೆ, ಇನ್ವೇರಿಯಬ್ಲಿ ನೆಲ್ಲಿಡಿನ್ ಶಿ ಗೋಸ್ ಅಲಾಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ಅ ಗರ್ಲ್ ಕ್ಯಾಥರಿನ್, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅವಳೇ ಸಾಕಿದಂತಹ ಮಗಳು. So avale sakirudu, though she's a foster mother, though she's a servant, but so what happened? So Catherine, she wanted Nellie to come, and she has come over there. And after she died, both junior Kathy and then Nellie, see, look at that, Nellie, she's still alive. 3 generations, first generation, second generation, third generation, Nellie, Hayton, Linton, and junior Kathy. The 3 are there. It's in the third generations. Look at that. So what happened? Fine day. So walking on the moors, Nellie, Kathy, both of them encounter Heathcliff, and he takes them to see Linton and Hayton. And Heathcliff understands that she's a daughter of Catherine. Just imagine how he would have been felt. Catherine ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜೊತೆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಕ್ಯಾಥರಿನ್ ಮಗಳು ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾಳೆ. And he was so happy, and he takes Kathy along with him, and he goes to Wuthering Heights. Adre illi enagtale, adre he did not take Nellie along with them. Nellie, she worries so much. Madle on brutal, he's such a violent man. And then she comes through walking, and she goes toward Wuthering Heights, and she was very much upset about Catherine. And what happens here? And then here he takes them to see Linton and Hayton, and Heathcliff hopes that Linton and Kathy will marry, so that Linton becomes the owner to Tuska's Grange. ಅವನ ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, certainly ನಾನಿವಾಗ ನನ್ನ ಮಗ ಇದನ್ನಲ್ಲ Linton and Kathy, in case if I get marry of them, they become a couple, and suddenly my son Linton will be a owner, the heir of the entire property of the Tuska's Grange. See, this is what happened. This is what he keeps in his mind. And further, and Heathcliff captivates them, both the Cathy and the Linton. He flocked them together. He kept them, captivate them, and Cathy escapes. And whereas the father is so much worried, and whereas Nelly Dinouse is worried because something may happen. He may do something to these people. He may problematize them. He may traumatize them in terms of verbal or physical. So they're worried, and he captivates them not to escape anywhere. And she returns to the Grange to see her father shortly before he dies. And somehow she escaped from the house, and she goes towards Tuska's Grange to look at his father, and that's Edgar Linton. Edgar Linton is almost like going to die. And now, Heathcliff hopes that Linton and Cathy will marry so that the Linton became the owner. That's fine. And she escaped to see her father. She comes to Tuska's Grange, and whereas the father, she returns to the Tuska's Grange to see her father shortly before he dies. And now Cathy arrives to Wuthering Heights, and also Linton dies here. So Cathy, she arrives to Wuthering Heights, Linton dies. By the time she arrives, after looking at the father, here Linton is also died because the boy was suffering from tuberculosis. Oh no, tuberculosis in suffer. He frequently coughs, and he dies of it. And Hayton tries to be kind to Cathy, but she withdraws from the word. And what happens here? And because when he captivated them, Heathcliff, he captivated both the Cathy and the Linton deliberately, and he married them off. And but there was not a happy marriage, because he captivated them, and he deliberately wanted to make them marry, and marry them off. What happens? So after that, she escapes. She escapes, and she wants to see her father. Everything happened, and she has come back by the time to the house. And here Linton also dies because of tuberculosis. Theirs is not a happy married life. It's just a premature married, and because he dies. This boy, he dies. And then Cathy arrives to the Wuthering Heights, and Linton dies. Hayton tries to be kind to Cathy, but she withdraws from the world. And here, who is there? Linton dies. The boy dies so early after their, the short marriage. And what happened? Here, the Hayton, he tries to be kind to Cathy, because Hayton, he's a son of Hindley. Cathy, she's a daughter of Catherine. Nodi. Hindley and Catherine, ಅವರಿಬ್ಬರು ಮಕ್ಕಳಿದಾರಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ Hayton and Cathy, now they wanted to be reunited. And here, though Cathy, she's a world of dejection. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅವಳಿಗೆ ಏನೋ ಬೇಡಪ್ಪ ಅನ್ಸ್ಕೊಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ, because our own Linton, who she deliberately married because of the Hitler, and he died, and she wanted to be alone, and she doesn't want to be anymore. And what happens? So here, and Cathy arrives to Wuthering Heights, Linton dies, and Hayton also tries to be kind, and but withdraws from the world. So illénagutte allige a novel, Nelly narration stop ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. That's why the narration stops at the Nelly Dean. ನಾನು ಇಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ನನ್ನ ಕತೆ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. So ಇಲ್ಲೇನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, so far Nelly Dean, she narrated the whole story to Mr. Lockwood, the present time, and because he himself asked what's all happening, and he listens. And what's happening because of the his experiences, and Nelly Dean, she narrates everything to him, and he was listening. Yes, so and so happened, and now he's so saddened because of such a traumatic story, and he disappointed whether should I stay back in the house as a tenant or not. So I stopped the story when the Nelly Dean also stops the story. And dear learners, and so probably sir is also waiting, and I took my 1 hour, and there is a little more incident. Probably tomorrow within 15 to 10 minutes I'll wind up the text with a few more questions. And thank you very much, and I'm very happy in the first explanation itself you didn't have any kind of conflict in terms of understanding the characters, for which I'm very happy. And thank you very much. I stop my session because sir is also waiting. So see you tomorrow. Good luck to you. Thank you, Arish. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to the second session of my today's class. Continuing from where I had stopped in the morning, I was supposed to give you few important questions related to Richard II. Right, Richard II got few important questions, at least four important questions on which you can focus on. On which you can focus. The questions are consider the kingly weakness of Richard II, or like question may there may be questions like comment on kingly weakness as presented in the play, comment on the kingly weakness has presented in the play King Richard II. The second most probable question is compare and contrast Richard II with Henry IV. Henry IV. And the third important question is discuss the significance of garden scene. So you see, garden scene is very important, where the two gardeners speak about the state of affairs in England. So what kind of political situation is in England? They compare Richard II and his other followers and his close associates to the weeds, WEEDS, weeds that you see in the garden. They compare Richard and his followers to the weeds, and whereas Henry and his followers and his associates are compared to beautiful flowers that you see in the garden. So at that time, Isabella, the queen of Richard II, the wife of Richard II, overhears the conversation of the two gardeners and feels disappointed to know the condition of England. At the same time, there again, Shakespeare is trying to give platform for the minor characters, even the minor characters like gardeners, two gardeners who have every right to speak about the political affairs of England. Political affairs of England. So that is very important. Garden scene and disposition scene is also important. They may ask you for short notes, garden scene and disposition scene. The first two questions, important questions, are like comment on the kingly weakness as presented in the play, Richard II. The second question is compare and contrast Richard II with Henry IV. And the third important question is like discuss the significance of garden scene, discuss the significance of disposition scene, garden scene. So they may ask you for short notes also, or even for 10 marks. These two important scenes. The significance of a disposition scene elucidate, and as I told you, those two important episodes or scenes are very important. Apart from that, you can focus on the remaining aspect, or they may also ask you a question on the role of Henry IV in the play. Uh, or directly, they may pose a question on Henry IV in Richard II. So that's all about Richard II. I gave you few important questions. You just focus on those questions. They may also ask you questions on plot and structure, like plot. Richard as a king. Act 1 and 2 covers Richard as a king, and Act 2 and 3 covers the rise of Henry. Rise of Henry. Act 3 and 4 covers the transfer of power. The transfer of power from Richard II to Henry IV. Okay, transfer of power from Richard II to Henry IV, and the last act, that is Act 5, covers Henry as a king. Henry has a king. So this is how the plot and structure has been divided, or has been formed, or has been structured, has been literally drawn by William Shakespeare. So in that way, this is how the acts are divided. This is how the important, again, episodes, important incidents are structured in the play. So coming to the next session, the second session, as I told you, now I'll be dealing with one more important text, that is Hamlet. Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So I'll be dealing with 4 to 5 texts from the same paper for your benefit. I hope if you can attend the questions on these texts, apart from the critical appreciations or critical observations by few important notable critics. So you can also like if I have got time, if I had time, I would have. If I had got another few hours, I would have completed the entire paper. But still, again, I try to complete maximum important texts that are allotted in that paper for the syllabus. So, as I told you now, like I'll be dealing with another important text, that is Hamlet. Hamlet by William Shakespeare. This particular play was written in the year 1601. It was written in the year 1601 and got published in the year 1604. Now, see, the thing is, he never used to publish. Shakespeare never used to publish his books. They were actually, he used to just write the scripts for on-stage performance, as I told you in the last class. Those scripts were converted into what plays, converted into books by his followers and friends. Now these scripts which were written for on-stage performance got published later. So this particular play got published in the year 1604, though it was written in 1601. 1601. Okay, so they say that this is a crucial period and a very peak time in Shakespeare's literary career. 1590s, 1590s, and the last decade of the 16th century and the first decade of the 17th century. 17th century are the two decades which in which the two decades where you see Shakespeare evolving as the greatest dramatist of the world. Those two decades are very important, very important when it comes to Shakespeare's literary career. So coming to this particular text, as I told you, it got published in the year 1604. 1604, as usual, like Shakespeare's depth to historian is very little. Okay, the thing is, he borrows material from some other source and he uses it for his own purpose. You know, this particular play, the source for this particular play is from Saxo Grammaticus, Historia Danica, Historia Danica. So there is a historian called Saxo Grammaticus, who has written a book on Danish history. Danish history means Denmark history. So the name of the book is Historia Danica, which got published in the year 1200, 1200. So in that way, he borrows material from that book, Saxo Grammaticus, Historia Danica. And the important factor about this particular play is, again, as I told you, Hamlet is chiefly a play, a play or a study of character rather than a drama of action. It's a play about character. It's a play about character than action, than anything related to action. There are plays where action, destiny, fate, or karma do plays major or do take center stage. Somehow in plays like Macbeth and other, Macbeth particularly is a play where you can see the destiny or fate taking the center stage, or acting too much on the character itself. Whereas here it is the failure in the character. It is the lapse in the character itself that you see here. Okay, again, Hamlet is a character which has been designed to show what the character lapse or the lapse in character. So again, there are some people who fail in life. But the reason behind it is they fail because the reason is they don't know where and when, at what context, what kind of action to take, or how to reply, how to respond to a particular condition or situation. In such context, some characters do fail, isn't it? Even you and me, we have failed on so many occasions. We have failed in picking certain, again, situations which is fruitful for our academic career or our future, isn't it? But in that way, as I told you, there is a character lapse here. Hamlet is a play which is chiefly a study of what? It's about a character rather than drama of action. It's a study about a character called Hamlet, rather than it's not a drama of action. You don't feel you don't again. It's a slowly moving. You don't find much action in the play. It's a slowly progressing play. It means entire play is slow in action. It is slow in action. It's like comparing to village life, a remote village life with the bustling city life of Bangalore, isn't it? Like it's almost like that, completely filled with actions, isn't it? Bangalore city life is city life consists of so much of actions, isn't it? People move here and there. There will be a lot of you and cry, isn't it? Whereas when it comes to village life, like it's like very slow moving. It's display. It's very slow moving when it comes to action. It's very slow when it comes to action. So that is the reason why even Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, at one point says that again when speaking about Coleridge, again Hamlet, S.T. Coleridge says that this character is what very moralistic, very it's ambiguous, very ambiguous. This character suffers because of indecision, ambiguity or indecision. So that is the reason why our critics have got negative opinion about this character called Hamlet. So they have responded so much. Like even Shakespeare received so much of criticism because of creating this particular character called Hamlet, for creating such a character called Hamlet. So as I told you, in Saxo, the Grammatica's original story, in that Historia Danica, he speaks about a king. Again, the same thing. The plot is almost the same. He has borrowed the source from that book. So he has not made much changes except the names of the places, including the names of some personalities, characters. Apart from that, the plot, the structure, or the events, whatever that you see in Saxo Grammatica's Historia Danica is reflected even in this particular play. As I told you, as a writer, Shakespeare has got little depth. He has no depth to any historian. He pays little depth to any historian, and little depth to any historian in that regard means he pays no regard for any historian. He borrows material, he borrows some gist, and he creates his own place. So in that way, he succeeds. Who? Shakespeare succeeds. So undoubtedly, in almost all Shakespearean plays, again Shakespeare was also impressed by what? The helplessness of man. The helplessness of man in the clutches of fate, or fate means karma. Shakespeare believed in karma theory, fate, undoubtedly, Shakespeare was impressed by what? The helplessness of man in the clutches of fate or karma. His personal views on fate is what is found in so many plays. Can be found in so many plays. He has got his own opinion about karma, fate, destiny, ಹಣೆ ಬರ. ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಶೇಕ್ಸ್ಪಿಯರ್ಗೆ ಅವರದೇ ಆದಂತ ಒಂದು ವಿಚಾರಧಾರೆ, ಒಂದು ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್, ಒಂದು ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಇತ್ತು. So that he presents in his plays in various platforms through various characters. One particular example is in the play called King Lear. Gloucester uses the words of destiny. Gloucester is another character in the play King Lear who speaks about destiny. Again, in fact, he says, as flies to wanton boys, as flies to the wanton boys, are we to the gods. They kill us for their sport. So gods kill us for their sport. Sport means ಕ್ರೀಡೆಯ ಒಂದು ಆಸಕ್ತಿಗೆ ಗಾಡ್, ದೇವರುಗಳಿಗೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನ ಜೊತೆ ಆಟ ಆಡೋದೇ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರೀಡೆ ಇದ್ದಾಗೆ ಅಂತ, ಮನರಂಜನೆ ಇದ್ದಾಗೆ ಅಂತ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ಗ್ಲಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಸೇಸ್. ಆಸ್ ಫ್ಲೈಸ್ ಟು ವ್ಯಾಂಟನ್ ಬಾಯ್ಸ್, ಫ್ಲೈಸ್ ಚಿಟ್ಟೆಗಳು, ಸಣ್ಣ ಪುಟ್ಟ ಕೀಟಗಳನ್ನ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಹಿಡಿಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಆಟ ಆಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹಿಡಿಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನ ಪಡ್ತಾವೋ ಹಾಗೆ ದೇವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದ ಜೊತೆಗೂ ಚಲಾಟ ಆಡ್ತಾನೆ ಅಂತ. In the way means here Shakespeare is speaking about karma, theory of fate, destiny. In another context, like in the play Hamlet, when he speaks about karma with Horatio, in the same play Hamlet, or again Hamlet speaks with his friend Horatio, Horatio. He speaks about destiny, fate again You can take it down. There is divinity that shapes our hands. There is divinity that shapes our hands. Rough, heave, damn, as we will. So what does he mean here? He means that these lines are taken from Act 5, Scene 2, lines 11, 10 and 11. Act 5, Scene 2, line number 10 and 11, line number 10 and 11, where he speaks about destiny. Hamlet to Horatio means, it means that there is God, fate, destiny that guides our lives, and no matter how hard we try to oppose, the fate, destiny, or karma, we cannot change it. We may try, we may attempt to change our destiny, our karma, or fate, but it is already written. It is already written. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಬರ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಬರ್ದಾಗಿದೆ. That is what it says. So everything, even though if we try to change the destiny, it cannot happen. It cannot happen because God has already designed that destiny, and though we try to change it, it cannot happen. That is what it means. So because fate, destiny, again, is another important factor that deals in this play. There is also, right, again, also direct opposite view of life is presented in the words of Cassius in Julius Caesar. Cassius, when speaking to Brutus, again, Brutus speaks about destiny, fate, or karma. So coming to this particular play, so then again, this Hamlet is a prince of Denmark. You know where Denmark is located? Denmark, Scotland, England. They're all neighboring countries. France. Denmark. He was a prince of Denmark. And he had a father called Hamlet Senior. So this boy is Hamlet Junior. He has just returned to Denmark from Wittenberg, from University of Wittenberg, where he had gone for studies. Wittenberg, Wittenberg. Wittenberg is the university that's located in Germany, modern day Germany. He had gone there for studies. So he has come back. So on what purpose he has come back? He has come back after knowing that his father is no more. And his mother has married to his own uncle. His mother's name is Gertrude. Gertrude. Gertrude is the mother of Hamlet Jr. She is the wife of Hamlet Senior. Now Gertrude has married to Hamlet Senior's brother, that is Claudius. So Claudius is able to seduce Gertrude in marrying him, and let us see what happens in the play. So Act 1, Scene 1. Again, as I told you, Shakespeare's plays again do not go far from, like, almost all his plays are within 5 acts. You don't see single act, 2 acts, or 3 acts, or even 6 acts plays. So his plays are very much well designed, very well designed. So it again, all the incidents, all the episodes happen within 5 acts. Within 5 acts of that is how he structures his plays. So coming to this particular play, Hamlet, Scene 1, Act 1. In the very first scene of Act 1, Hamlet Senior's ghost. Hamlet Senior, who is already dead, his ghost appears on the castle of Elsinore. The castle of Elsinore, the ghost of the dead king of Denmark has appeared to them on the battlements of the Elsinore castle. This makes them fear. This makes the soldiers and the people who are guarding the castle, they are afraid, they are scared to see the ghost of the past king. The past means the dead king. They fear that something catastrophic event, or catastrophe may take place. Means ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ದುರಂತ, ಏನೋ ಒಂದು ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಕರಾಳ ಘಟನೆ ನಡೆಯುವ ಒಂದು ಸಂಭವ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ. They feel that some catastrophic event may take place because they have witnessed what? The sight of ghost on the battlements of Elsinore Castle, which is located in Denmark, and they feel that something, it's an omen, O-M-E-N. Omen means something, it's a sign, bad sign. it's a bad sign. They feel that something is going to happen to the state of Denmark because they just saw the ghost of what? The ghost of Hamlet Senior. So who comes and reports to Hamlet Junior? It is Horatio. Horatio, the closest friend of Hamlet Junior, is the one who comes and reports about the ghostly visitation of Hamlet to Hamlet Junior. Hamlet Junior, you know, the play is founded on the supernatural phenomena. The play is founded on the supernatural phenomena because Shakespeare believed that during that time he had an opinion, sorry, that the audience, particularly people of his generation, people of his era, do like what supernatural presence of two supernatural elements in plays because that makes them curious, that it can make the play interesting. So that is the reason why you see the presence of supernatural elements in more almost all his plays, almost all his plays. You can see that Shakespeare was very much convinced that the people, particularly the concept of witches in Macbeth, okay, the idea of witches, presenting witches in the very first scene. Here also, again, again, Shakespeare always believed that so Act One, Scene One, he always believed that it should contain what lot of action. So if each act of if a, sorry if the very first act of each play filled with lot of energy, lot of actions, that means it can sustain what the interest of the audience, the interest of audience. That is what Shakespeare believed in. That is the reason why every play has got a very interesting beginning, very interesting beginning. Even in Macbeth, you have an interesting beginning. Macbeth meets the three witches. Here also, in the very first scene, Act One, again Shakespeare is able to introduce the ghost of what? The ghost of whom? Hamlet Senior. Hamlet Senior. Again, he believed, as I told you, they feel that some national trouble or event, some catastrophic event may take place in Denmark. So Horatio comes and reports the same to Hamlet Junior. Let us see what happens in scene two. Claudius and the Queen both they protest against Hamlet's prolonged spell of depressed spirits, okay, and mourning for his father. So again, Hamlet is already mourning. He has come back. He doesn't know what to do because he has lost his father. He is in depressed state of mood. His mindset is depressed. Okay, he's not at all happy. So he's mentally ill. He's mentally ill. Both Claudius and his wife Gertrude, who is actually the mother of Hamlet Jr., they are worried. They are worried to see the present state of mind of Hamlet. They don't know what has happened to Hamlet Jr. So, but why is he so disappointed, dejected? He is disappointed because he has lost his father. But at the same time, he is also disappointed because of because of the hasty marriage. Means he is disturbed because he is confused because his mother has married to his own uncle in no time. Like he has lost his father, his mother, whereas his own mother has married to his own uncle. So this is disturbing for him because he doesn't understand what was the need to marry him in such an urgency. In such an urgency, over hasty marriage to this Claudius, to his uncle Claudius. So he is in a disturbed state of mind, dissatisfied with life, and even had the entertaining thoughts of suicide. Committing suicide. In the very first act, scene 2, we are introduced with Hamlet, who is mentally disturbed, not because of the loss of his father, but also because of over hasty marriage of his mother. Means the sudden urgency or the urgent the way she got married to his own uncle in no time. Again, within the short span of time, she has agreed to marry his own uncle, and she has married it already, and this is disturbing for him. And at the same time, he's trying to seek what justification for actions and examination of motives. He doesn't know what to do. He's confused, but he's not aware that Hamlet Senior, is killed by his own father. Sorry, for his own uncle. Hamlet Senior is killed by his own uncle Claudius, and that information again, even Gertrude is not aware that Hamlet Senior is killed by Claudius, by her second husband Claudius. So in that way Gertrude is also in dark, and Hamlet is also in dark. Hamlet is not fully aware that what has happened, what happened to his father, what was that incident, reason, what was that reason that made his father die. Okay, so in that dilemma, he is in confused state, he is in ambiguity, he is in confused state, and he doesn't know what to do. He appears mentally sick for all the onlookers, including his uncle and to his own mother Gertrude. Act 1, Scene 3. So you see, in Scene 3, Laertes is the son of Polonius. The son of Polonius. Polonius is one of the prominent loyal courtier who stays in the kingdom of Denmark. Very, very loyal, honest. Okay, who again is a courtier that works for Claudius. And critics say that Shakespeare might have met one of the foolish, old, busy, old fool like Polonius, because Shakespeare again might have met someone from the royal family who has got the resemblance of Polonius. Polonius is very, very interesting character. Polonius is the father of Ophelia. Ophelia is the same girl with whom Hamlet is in love. Okay, Hamlet and Ophelia, both of them love with each other at the same time. Polonius and Laertes, they advise Ophelia to stay away from Hamlet. The reason is they feel that since he is mentally disturbed, mentally sick, it is not good for Ophelia to continue her love with Hamlet. At the same time, this scene is very, very important. Scene 3, Act 1, where Laertes is leaving for Paris. Laertes, Laertes. Laertes is the son of Polonius in the play, and he's leaving for Paris for his future studies. And you know, there is a famous, there are some famous lines in Scene 3, Act 1, where Polonius advises his son to follow. Certain yardsticks as a student in a foreign country. So as a responsible father, he advises his son to follow certain yardsticks as a student, to be humble, to be simple. So he has got so many advices to give. So Laertes listens to all those advices patiently, and he leaves for Paris for his advanced studies. So in that way, like Laertes lives for France for his future studies, whereas Polonius and Ophelia, they stay in Denmark. Now, and at this juncture, Horatio comes and informs Hamlet about the killing, the methodology, or the way again Hamlet was killed. So he comes to know that Hamlet was killed by none other than Claudius himself. His own uncle is the one who has got involved in the killing of his father. So he along with Horatio goes to the battlements of Elsinore Castle. There he waits for the ghost of Hamlet Senior to appear, and the apparition of Hamlet Senior comes over there. All the others, they remain silent because they can't see the apparition, whereas the apparition of Hamlet's ghost is visible only to Hamlet Junior. So it narrates everything, and in that conversation between Hamlet Junior and Senior, he comes to know that it is Claudius who killed Hamlet Senior, and Hamlet hears from the ghost that the account of how his father was poisoned, how he was poisoned by his own uncle, Claudius, and his mother seduced, but this uncle has now had himself elected as a king. That you should not forget. And the ghost calls Hamlet to avenge, to take revenge for its death, for its death. His own father, the ghost of his own father, appears before him and requests him to take revenge against his own uncle Claudius. That's very, very important because at the same time, Hamlet Senior also, as a ghost, also advises Hamlet Jr. to spare his mother because the ghost feels that she has no role to perform. She has no role to play in the killing of Hamlet Senior. Means it feels that the ghost feels that she has no role. She had no role in the killing. So, but at the same time now Hamlet Junior is confused because he has to kill the king, the Claudius, his own uncle, the present king of Denmark. At the same time, he has to spare his mother because he's scared about the public outrage. He doesn't know how to deal with this context or with this situation because this is the stupendous task. This is the stupendous task as a character again. That is the reason why he is in confusion. So he has to kill his uncle, but at the same time he has to spare his mother, who has married to his own uncle. So this is the stupendous task to kill the ruling king and to reveal his mother's shame to the public. Okay, to do all this and yet make appear as it were done with the motive of personal gain and achievement. Again, without the motive of personal gain or achievement. So he has to prove to the public that he did it. He killed his uncle not for the sake of his personal achievement. It is for the sake of for the sake of Denmark, for the sake of Denmark. So it is a complicated and tremendous mission he has got ahead. So he has to again that has been entrusted on him by Hamlet Senior. So he has to what complete the mission with perfection. So at the same time, he has to kill his own uncle, and at the same time, he has to win the hearts of the people because people should avenge for the killing of they may be outraged or they may what the public may get angry with the murder of Claudius. They may chase Hamlet Junior. That is the reason why he's scared about public opinion at the same time about his own personal image, about his own personal image, and the welfare of Danish state and his mother's honor, the welfare of Danish state and his mother's honor have to be regarded. That is the reason why Hamlet, Hamlet as a character, it's a confused character. It's a character which is known for procrastination, means postponing things. So he's confused. Again, like that is the reason there is a famous line from the text which has been used by Shakespeare. So that particular line is the line itself reflect the nature of Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. Means to kill or not to kill, that is the question. He is in dilemma. He doesn't know what to do because he has to keep the state of the respect of Danish kingdom, the welfare of Danish kingdom. At the same time, he has to take care of the honor, of his mother's chastity, honor, social respect. So he has to keep all that in mind before taking any course of action. Any course of action. So he comes to know about all that, the killing and all that. Let us see what is there in Act 2, Scene 1. Hamlet has been deliberately putting on his pose of madness, and Ophelia has been advised by her father to avoid Hamlet. Again, this increases. In fact, this kind of behavior from Ophelia, who Ophelia avoids Hamlet, and in fact, it adds to the pain of Hamlet, who is already in mental trauma. Ophelia deserting Hamlet is like what added pain to Hamlet. So his mental sickness doubles almost. So he totally feels lonely now. And Polonius is depicted as typically an old busy fool, as I already told you, whom Shakespeare might have met. Okay, such a type of character in the royal court, and that is the reason why he has created uh, a character like Polonius in the play. So Polonius goes to meet Claudius. In fact, Claudius is worried because he is worried and also suspects. He also suspects that Hamlet might have a doubt about the killing of his father. That is the reason why he appoints the two assistants, that is Guildenstern and another one. There is the two assistants. Someone is asking which part of it. What which part of it? I hope I'm getting like I'm speaking. I'm giving a lecture on Hamlet. Okay. Someone is asking a question in comment box. Which part of it? So I'm in Act 2, Scene 1. Okay. Ophelia has been advised and she deserts Hamlet, and she remains aloof. She remains aloof from him, and this mentally disturbs Hamlet. As I told you, his pain is almost doubled now, so he cannot manage the situation. And at the same time, as I told you, Claudius suspects. Claudius suspects about the the mental sickness or the illness of Hamlet. So he appoints the two servants of the old servants of Hamlet to deal with Hamlet, to know what exactly is the reason behind this mental illness. At the same time, he also asks Polonius to know what is the reason behind his mental sickness, or is the kind of behavior that Hamlet again is showing off. The reason again, Polonius, what he does, he goes to the palace of Hamlet to find what exactly is the reason for his mental sickness. And Polonius, he hides behind the arras. Arras means huge curtains, like. So he hides behind the arras of the palace, behind the doors, arras. So what happens when Hamlet is conversing, when he is having conversation with his mother, when he is posing questions to his mother, he comes to know that someone is hiding behind the curtains, behind the arras of of his palace. And what he does, he goes there and kills that Polonius without knowing that he is Polonius. He kills him instantly without knowing. He feels that it is his own uncle Claudius who is hiding behind the curtain, trying to know what is happening between the father, between the mother and the son, between the mother and the son. To be honest, like Hamlet was not sure. He was not sure that it is Polonius. He is not sure that it is Polonius who is hiding behind the curtains. But he instantly kills after hearing the noise, some noise coming from behind the again curtains. He goes there, okay, snatches the sword and kills him. Okay, he kills him instantly, immediately, and there lies the body of Polonius. Okay, and now Hamlet has become a murderer. He has killed Polonius and he is now a murderer. And later on, Claudius comes to know that Hamlet has killed Polonius. So he makes all the arrangement for Hamlet to live for England, for continuation of his studies, so that to avoid any kind of confrontation, political confrontation that may pick up in the state of Denmark. So what he does, in order to avoid all that, he uh, thinks of sending Hamlet to England. And Hamlet, what happens when he tries to go to England, when he is almost to set, when he is almost set to reach the harbor to catch hold of a ship where he can travel, in which he can travel to England. What happens there? He meets a boy called a boy from Norway who is going on a voyage to defeat uh, defeat defeat someone like for a piece of fire again land. He's going there. His name is 14 Brass. 14 Brass from Norway. Okay, he's going to Norway. Sorry, he's going to Norway from Denmark. Okay, to get a piece of land. He's going there to get a piece of land, so which he had lost in a tussle in a fight between the Norwegian Empire and himself. He's going along with his soldiers. His name is 14 Brass. Fortinbrass. 14 Brass. When he meets him, Hamlet feels that when this boy, king boy, is going to recover the land he had lost, a small piece of land he had lost. uh, what am I doing here? I'm going to England for studies, leaving back my mother, my kingdom. So, is it right for me to go to England like this? So, he compares himself with 14 Brass, a young commander who is going out of Denmark to Norway to fetch the land which he had lost in a conflict, from a conflict. So, when he compares himself with 14 Brass, he feels that it is time for him to stay back. So he doesn't continue his journey to England. He stays there and decides to take the revenge as advised by his father's ghost. So what happens in the story is he also again meets a touring theater which is passing over to again which has come to Denmark. He meets a group of amateur theater artists, a group of moving theater. He meets them. So he also asks them to perform a play in front of Claudius. So look at this smartness or the intelligence, or you can say the literary creativity of Shakespeare. So he creates a drama within a drama, a play within a play. So he asks those amateur these moving theater artists to come and perform in the royal court of Denmark before Claudius. So when they were asked, means they obey his request. So they come and perform in front of Claudius. The very intention for Hamlet to have this kind of play to have a play enacted before Claudius is to know whether Claudius is guilt-ridden or not. So the same kind of story, the same kind of incident, whatever that happened to Hamlet Senior has been enacted, is being enacted by the theater artist in front of Claudius. So he checks the mood, the tempo, the changing mindset of Claudius, whether he is guilt-ridden or not. But Claudius remains firm. At the same time, Claudius comes to know that it is pretty sure that it is. He comes to. It is very clear. It is very clear that it's very much clear that Hamlet Junior is fully aware of the way his father has been killed, who is responsible for the killing of his father. So Claudius comes to know about this because that is the reason why Hamlet has made an arrangement for this moving theater artist to come and perform in front of him. And the story of the play contains the same story. The way Claudius kills Hamlet Senior has been enacted in front of him, and the way he marries his brother's wife is the same thing that takes place in the play. So in that way, Shakespeare is able to it's a technique or the skill or the masterly skill, I can say, of Shakespeare to have a drama or to have a play within a play. So in that way, it's a new type of what experiment that Shakespeare adopts. It's a new type of experiment that Shakespeare adopts in this play, and in that technique or in that skill, Shakespeare again excels. Shakespeare excels, and people like this kind of technique where Claudius watches his own actions performed by the theater artist in front of him. So this makes him guilty, but he hardly expresses that guilt behavior or nature before the court people, royal court people. At the same time, when he comes to know that, Claudius also comes to know that this man is not supposed to live, he's not going for England for studies, he has come back, and he also comes to know that he is fully aware that this man, that is Hamlet Jr., will be a threat for his power, will be a threat for his kingship in future. So somehow he has to diminish him, he has to destroy him from his route, like from his track. For that purpose, what happens? Laertes returns from Paris from his studies after coming to know that, when he comes to know that his father has been killed by Hamlet, he comes back. He comes back to take revenge against Hamlet, and this Claudius, he succeeds. Claudius, on the other hand, succeeds in filling what, a kind of anger or hatredness in the mind of in the mind of uh, in the mind of Laertes, and he arranges a duel fight, between Laertes and Hamlet, where again the duel, again the foil means two thin sword-like metals. Thin sword foils are like sword-like equipment, armory, but which is very thin. It's the layer of a metal. It's almost a layer of metal that I've seen in fencing event that takes place in during Olympics. So he asks both Laertes and Hamlet to have a duel, a fight with the foil, and both the foils were poisoned. Laertes doesn't know that Hamlet's foil is poisoned, and Laertes is fully aware that his foil is poisoned, so that with the help of that foil he can kill Hamlet. But on the other hand, Claudius is so smart that he has used the same poison in the foil that is used by Hamlet at the time of duel. At the time of duel, both of them during the fight, they cut each other, they cut their bodies in each other, and poison naturally enters the body. And Hamlet comes to know about this from Laertes. Laertes dies immediately, and Hamlet, what he does, he kills both he kills Claudius, whereas the wine which has been kept there is also poisoned, which was accidentally drunk by Gertrude. Gertrude drinks the wine which is kept there for Hamlet, which is also poisoned by Claudius, without proper knowledge, without any knowledge of it. She consumes the wine, and she also dies. On the other hand, Claudius is killed by Hamlet, and Hamlet also dies because of the cut or the injury that has happened due to the poisoned foil. And what happens in the end? At the end of the story, you come to know that Fortinbras, who had gone to Norway to fetch the piece of land which he had lost, the commander who serves to the Denmark army, he has come back and he takes the lead. He takes the state of affairs of Denmark to his control, and he becomes the future would-be king of Denmark. It's very important. So the play is all about, as I told you, it's about procrastination, postponing things. Ophelia also dies. It's another important factor which I forgot to tell you. Ophelia dies in Act 4 itself, sorry. And Ophelia again dies because of mental trauma, mental sickness, because she could not bear the pain. She could not bear the pain after separation from Hamlet. She is mentally sick and she dies because of that mental sickness. And also she has lost her father Polonius, which you should not forget. That particular scene is very important, where a body is brought to the graveyard and you have grave digger scene. Very interesting. Grave digger speaking the philosophy of life, but it's a comic scene It's a comic scene, very, very important scene, grave digger scene. They may ask you for short notes in the exam, grave digger scene, where the scene, entire scene is very, very comic. That is the quality, that is the strength or style or technique, or you can say a uniqueness of Shakespeare. Because throughout the play, entire play, you see, even at the end, almost all the major characters do die, isn't it? Even Ophelia dies, even at the time of that particular like climax. It's almost like a climax, Act 4 climax, where Ophelia dies, and you have a grave digger scene. And in that scene, again, he brings in a comic episode, comic conversation taking place between grave diggers. The reason behind having a comic scene in the tragic events amongst the tragic events is to lighten the momentum, to bring in a kind of what relaxation or a kind of mental peace in the minds of audience. That is the reason why Shakespeare uses some comic episodes, incidents, events, uses them. He blends those incidents or events, episodes in between tragic, in between tragic events. In almost all the tragedies, you find such comic episodes, comic events. So this grave digger scene is very, very important. They may ask you in the exam. So one important question is discuss the uncertainty or ambiguity or ambiguity of Hamlet that you see in the character of Hamlet. Consider Hamlet as a tragic play. Consider Hamlet as a tragic play. That is the most probable question. And another important question that may pop up in the exam is like they may also ask you about the love relationship between Ophelia and Hamlet, the supernatural, the use of supernatural elements, supernatural creatures, supernatural elements in the play Hamlet, the role of Laertes, Polonius' advice to his son. That particular episode might be asked for 5 marks, short notes, and they may also ask you a question about again, as I told you, the conflicting mindset of Hamlet, the tragedy, Hamlet as a tragic play. They may also ask you a question about the relationship between Gertrude and Claudius. Gertrude and Claudius. They may ask you a question on Gertrude, the character Gertrude itself. So there may be so many questions again on dealt with such issues like so. As I told you, this play is about the failure in character. Failure in character. Hamlet, as a personality, as a young prince of Denmark, is a failed character. That is what Shakespeare wanted to project. What happens if a person, if a human being, or anybody it might be, in your life, if you fail to take proper decisions. So what will happen to you? Like Hamlet fails to take proper decisions. He doesn't know what to do. He reserves his animosity or hatredness till the end. He also fails in his love relationship with Ophelia, isn't it? He's not able to sustain that relationship. At the same time, he's mentally sick, disturbed. He doesn't know what to do. He keeps postponing the things. So in the end, at last, when it is inevitable for him, so what he does, when he also comes to know that his life is also at risk, what he does, he kills his own uncle Claudius. Along again, at the same time, he also comes to know that Laertes is also poisoned. Laertes also dies. Claudius also dies. Gertrude also dies. And the entire play means the last means the play ends with the killing or with the death of, and it means all the major characters of the play. That is the reason why this play can be easily called as a pure tragedy, because all the characters, major characters in the play, do die at the end of the play. So it is Fortinbras, a minor character who takes up the kingdom, who takes the chargeship or the control of the kingdom, and he becomes the would-be king of. He chooses to be the would-be king of Denmark. So that's all about the play. I hope I hope you have understood the gist or the important issues in the play called Hamlet. Important issues dealt by Shakespeare in the play Hamlet. And still, if you have any doubts regarding this particular text, you can ask me. I've got another 4 minutes to manage. 4 minutes, another 4 minutes. If you have any doubt regarding this particular text, you can ask me straight away. I hope you can hear me. Is there any doubt? I think I have got another 4 minutes. I need your permission to wind up the class. I'm expecting your comments, huh? Is that okay? Yes, there are so many study materials available on this text. You can browse in the internet. You'll get so many materials in PDF format. So many materials again, critical appreciations, observations about this particular character called Hamlet. So, what was the true intention behind creating such a or writing such a play or creating such a character called Hamlet? Why Shakespeare focused on this character called Hamlet? What was the true intention? So, what is the speciality of this character? Again, what is the speciality of this particular play? So you'll get abundant material in the internet. You can certainly browse. Professor, please explain. Hamlet is a tragic hero. In few words, yes, he is a tragic hero, but who is responsible for that? He himself is responsible. He himself is responsible for that. The reason is when he could have taken the proper decision, he fails in that. If he had taken proper decision and killed his uncle immediately after knowing that he is responsible for the death of his father, he controls his anger, isn't it? He postpones his things. And if he had killed his uncle and if he had told everything to his mother, he could have become the king of Denmark. But what he does, he postpones the things, he hides his anger, he sustains it, and he postpones everything, and he keeps it till the end. And at the end, when there is risk for his own life, he thinks of killing his uncle. At the very last stage of his life, when everything is not within his limits, he takes to take control of everything, take control of all the actions. But by that time had elapsed. Elapsed means it was out of his control. It was out of his control. So his life was at risk, and his mother's life was also at risk. And by the time everything was supposed to complete, uh, supposed to come to an end, isn't it? So it was out of his limit to change to change the future of his life, or to change the fortunes of his life. It was not within his limits. So the procrastination or postponing the things, the ambiguity, uncertainty is the real cause, or the lack of courage. You may call it as lack of courage, but I don't agree that he lacked any courage, because he kills Polonius, thinking that it is Claudius, right? But there at that particular juncture, he didn't lack any courage. He kills Polonius, thinking it is Claudius. So I don't think he is he is timid or soft type of character. No, not at all. He's very brave, very energetic. But the thing is, he's psychologically depressed because of his mother marrying to his own uncle, because the way she got hurriedly married to his own uncle. That is the reason. Though he lost his father, he was mentally fit, but still, after coming to know that, after he comes to know that it is his mother's hasty decision of marrying uncle, like, he comes to know that It is that reason which disturbs him a lot than his father's death. So he comes to know, he realizes that. He realizes that. So I think his mother, yes, his mother is innocent. His mother is innocent. She is not aware of not aware that it is Claudius who is responsible in the killing of Hamlet Senior. I hope I hope that's enough. I'll meet you again tomorrow with a different text, the different topic. Thank you one and all. Good day. All the best. Huh? Enjoy your day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all ready to listen to my lecture, as this is the last session of today's lecture series. Let me start with Wordsworth, and then later I move on to Indian English novel, that is Where Shall We Go This Summer, the title of the novel, which is written by Anita Desai. Hope you're all familiar with these names and with this text, as you have uh, written assignments and submitted assignments. As I have already given you a brief introduction regarding William Wordsworth in my previous session, let me not go in detail into that. And I just give you an important thing regarding Wordsworth. Just let me repeat some few sentences in order to make you familiar with his personality and his writings and all. Hope I am audible enough, right? And if you have any doubts, you can ask me. As I have told you that you can call us and even you can drop us messages. Good evening, everyone, and let me start with Wordsworth again. Just give you a brief, just I'm briefing about his life and style of writing. As I have told you, just this is somewhat like warming up sessions where you need to know what kind of a poet or authors they were. And William Wordsworth, as we all know, that he is considered as a poet of nature, and he is the profounder of pantheism. And I told you the meaning of pantheism in my last section. Pantheism means it's a philosophy where one can find God through nature. Okay, so they wish to worship the god in the form of nature. That is the concept. That kind of concept is called as the pantheism. And as we all know that he is considered as the poet laureate of England, those were the time. And in those days, he was considered, and he was one of the founders of Romanticism, as I have explained in my previous session. Then Dramatism, as I have already told you, that this is a wave of literary expression that ignored in Europe towards the end of the 18th century, right? Which this particular genre, or in this sect of in those days or in that place, the poets wanted to give more preferences for uh, emotions, feelings, right? And even we could also find some of the important spiritual values as well as its deep engagement with nature. Especially, they have all the poets, especially the romantics I'm talking about, they have a good rapport and they wish to have a good rapport with nature, okay, and the self. And we could find the very good harmony between man and nature throughout their poetry. Like William Wordsworth was one of the first English romantic poet, and who, along with Samuel Taylor Coleridge, he published a philosophy or a philosophical book jointly published under the title Lyrical Ballads. And later, I told you that it became a Bible for all the romantics. Okay, so he is known for his romantic poetry. Just I wanted to deal with few important poems. One is "The World Is Too Much With Us" and "The Tintinnabel." And let me give you this poem in a capsule form, because we, as I have told you, that we are running short of time and we have to cover all the portions. And if you have any doubts in any subject, for that sake, you can ask me and I'll try to solve your problems. So, but it should be within, if it is in my what area or broad area of research, definitely I'll try to solve your problems. So, Tintin Abbey, this is the poem where in this poem, William Wordsworth, this poem is considered as William Wordsworth. very well-known poem or famous poem, which was published in 1798. And it is a conversational poem that contains element of an ode and dramatic monologue. In my very first session itself, I think in my first class, I talked about various forms of poetry, right? And while before I explained you the Kamala Das poetry and A.K. Ramanujan, I remember I dealt with the forms of poetry. So this particular poem can be categorized as ode, okay, and it has elements of both the ode and dramatic monologue. Dramatic monologue, while I was teaching Browning and Browning poems, I dealt with that particular concept or form of poetry. Hope I am audible enough. Am I too fast? No, you can follow me. Yeah, the poem is, especially I'm talking about Tinton Abbey. This poem is based on a small place situated in the village of Tinton in the Monmouthshire, on the Welsh bank of the River Wye. Wordsworth, through this poem, helps the readers, especially his ardent followers, to understand his philosophies on nature and its beauty. Okay, very nice poem, but lengthy poem. And to this poem, he just wanted to make us realize his what we can say his concept of beauty and his good rapport with nature and how a poet should be and how a poet should convey a moral message to the readers like that. Just I'm just briefing you about important poems written by Wordsworth, and as you're all familiar with another famous poem, Daffodils, you know very much. One of the classics in English romantic poetry, this poem became a milestone in history of romanticism as well as in the history of English literature. And daffodils, these are the flowers, right? The title of the poem is Daffodils. So this poem tells a tale about a poet discovering a field of beautiful flowers while wandering around a village. And this poem was published in 1807. The poem was inspired by Wordsworth's encounter with a long belt of daffodils. And he says, no, in the poem, thousands of daffodils I saw. Okay, so many daffodils. So he wrote this poem while taking a walk with his sister Dorothy, composed in 1802. So again, another important poem is Resolution and Independence. Actually, this poem is prescribed for your study. This year you have to study. This is very interesting poem again, and which gives a very super message, very strong message to all the readers. And the title itself tells us that resolution and independence. And if it is had it been an offline class, we could have dealt an hour this poem in an hour. It's such a long poem, very interesting as well as we could have made or discussed so many things about this poem, but it's okay. Let us not ponder over it very much. But this poem, it is a beautiful lyric written by William Wordsworth. Again, I'm talking about another form of poetry that is lyric. Okay, lyric means somewhat like a song. So this is another lyric poem published by Wordsworth in 1807. This poem is in two volumes. The poem is based on Wordsworth's actual encounter with a leech gatherer near his home at Doe Cottage in Grasmere. See, this is the background of Wordsworth and where he and the lifestyle and the style of writing and the source of inspiration for him, everything. And let me move on to another very interesting poem. As I have told you that the world is too much with us, and this poem is also prescribed for your study. This is also very important for the sake of from your examination point of view. The title itself tells us the world is too much with us. What do you mean by this? And what does the poet want to convey to the readers? What does he convey? What does he convey? The message or the title? If at all, if I ask you that, can you bring out the significance of the title? The world is too much with us. Maybe the writer or the speaker of this poem may be fed up of modern age, right? Or maybe he wants to what narrators the predicament of a modern man, and even he might have frustrated by the monotonous life of modern man in this modern age, because we all are busy with earning and spending money, right? Maybe. And let us see what does he want to tell us through this poem. The title and the tone of the speaker or the poet, when we start reading this poem, we understand that angrily the speaker accuses the modern age of having lost its connection to nature. And in this modern age, do you think we all always want to be in touch with the nature? No, get we all got adjusted to the urban life, metro life, like that. So the speaker angrily he accuses, he blames the present generation for having lost their connection with the nature. And being a nature poet, he doesn't expect the present generation or modern men to be away from the nature. So that poem starts with like that: getting and spending, we lay waste our parts. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away a sordid boon. This is how he writes the poem. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Do you think he's praising our lifestyle or standard of living or the way we are living? No. Getting and spending, we are wasting our powers and energy. So little we see in nature that is ours. So we have given our hearts away a sordid boon. He says that we have completely ignored the nature, which means to say we have completely ignored the religion, God, everything, but we always keep ourselves busy in earning and spending. Then he says that even when the sea bares her bosom to the moon and the winds howl, and humanity is still out of tune and looks on uncaringly at the spectacle of the storm. So even W.B. Yeats in his poem, what's that? The Second Coming, he says, "We human beings we have lost humanity," right? Of course, sometimes. Generally we have to agree, and generally everybody says we are, though we are human beings, we have lost our humanity. Here also the same thing occurs, and the speaker wishes that he were a pagan raised according to a different vision of the world, so that standing on this pleasant sea, though he is standing on the pleasant sea, he could not see a wonderful happy life being lived by another human being, because they don't have time to enjoy each and everything in nature. So he might see the image of ancient gods rising from the waves, and a sight that would cheer him greatly. Being the nature poet, he knows how to enjoy each and everything which is available in nature. But do you think we all have time or patience to enjoy each and everything? No. So he might see the images, he can see. And there is a saying in Kannada, right? What the god cannot see, the poet can see that, right? Ravi Kanadanu Kavi Kanda, or what the sun cannot see, the poet can see, like that. Then he imagines Proteus rising from the sea, the Triton blowing his redder horn. So this is a very simple. Actually, it's a sonnet. The world is too much with us. It's a sonnet, a 14-line poem, very simple poem, small poem. But the message it conveys, no, it's very interesting, and it has loaded of messages. It is completely loaded with so many messages. And let us know the form of this poem. As I have already told you that this is a sonnet form. This is written in a form of a sonnet, and this is one of the best and most excellent sonnets written by Wordsworth in 1800s. Okay, and sonnets are, as I have discussed, as we all know, that it is a 14-line poetic inventions or a lyric written in iambic pentameter. There are several varieties of sonnets, as I told you, that Petrarchan sonnet, Italian sonnet. Okay, the world is too much with us. It takes the form of a Petrarchan sonnet. He doesn't follow the Shakespearean way of writing sonnets or Shakespearean sonnet, but he follows the form of Petrarchan sonnet, which has an octave and a sestet. Octave means just I'm talking about the technicality of writing poem. Octave, it has 8 lines stanza. It is a 8 line stanza, and sesset 6 lines. Got it. So uh, the form goes like this, and even regarding the rhyming scheme, ABBA, and the octave CD, CD, CD. So this is the common pattern for Petrarchan sonnets. Then, how do so far we were discussing about I was talking about the summary and how does the poet write and what does he want to convey, everything. And let us have a critical examination of this poem. This poem, as I have already told you, that this falls in line with a number of sonnets and written by Wordsworth in the early 80s, 1800s, that criticize or admonish what Wordsworth saw as the decadent material cynicism of the time. And most of the people or poets or literators at that particular century, they were cynic, and we could find note of cynicism of that time. The poem relatively simple, and which angrily states that human beings are too preoccupied with the material, and the world, the poem starts no getting and spending, especially these phrases, which tells us or which make us to introspect ourselves. So, which has lost our lost touch with the spiritual. The present humanity or human, the present generation has lost its touch with the spirituality and with nature. And in the second part, the speaker dramatically proposes an impossible personal solution to his own problem. And not only his own problem, his problem can be considered as the problem of whole humankind or whole mankind, right? So he wishes he could have been raised as a pagan. So he could still see ancient gods, okay, in the action of nature, thereby gains his spiritual solace. Hope, are you listening? Yeah. If you don't follow me, you can ask me, or you can, sorry, you can drop me a message there so that I can answer then and there itself. Hope you're all following me. And on the whole, this sonnet especially, we could find some spiritual elements and we could find some moral messages. And as I have told you that after reading this poem, definitely we have to, being human beings and belong to this modern age, and where we are living somewhere like under the concept of globalization and so many so on, we have to introspect or we have to examine ourselves. And his thunderous great God, he uses the term great God, indicates the extremity of his wish in Christian England. One did not often wish to be a pagan, but whereas here the poet wants to be a pagan. On the whole, this sonnet offers an angry summation of the familiar Wordsworthian theme of communion with nature. I told you, no, as he is a poet of nature, and obviously the common things or commonality will be there, the similarities. What he is, he expects the citizens to be or the public to be like that. So he is blaming us because we have lost the touch with the nature and we have forgotten our God and religion, which means to say, what he meant was we have lost ethics, ideology, and we don't have ethics like that. So, and he states precisely how far the early 19th century was from living out the Wordsworthian ideal. And this poem is very important for its rhetorical force, which shows Wordsworth increasing confidence with language as an implement of dramatic power. Okay, sweeping the wind and the sea up like flowers in a bouquet. And for being representative of other poems in the Wordsworth canon, notably in London 1802. Okay, the poem was also written by him. In there also, the speaker dreams of bringing back the dead poet John Milton to save his decadent era. Okay, this is how the poet tries to. It's a very short poem, tries to convey so many messages. And let me move on to another important poem, as I have told you, that Tintin Abbey. And again, this is the poem written by William Wordsworth, very important for your examinations. Right? So the actual title of this poem is Lines Written a Few Miles Above Tinton Abbey. And if you remember the title Tinton Abbey, that's enough. And if you have any doubts so far regarding the word is too much with us, you can ask me. No, no? Okay, let me move on to the next poem. As I have told you that Tinton Abbey, this is also very important poem. And once you start reading, definitely you become very familiar with the style and technique of Wordsworth and what actually he meant, or the pantheism, or the concept of pantheism. How does he inculcate everything in his poetry? And one more point, that being a pantheist or being a poet of nature, how does he want to worship nature through his poetry? Got it? Yeah. Let me move on to Tintin Abbey, because after that I'm going to talk about a very interesting novel again, and it is also important. Uh, and you will get a major question from that novel, Indian novel. Hope you are all familiar with the title. Where shall we go this summer? Written by Anita Desai. Okay. Yeah, Tintin Abbey. This is the poem commonly known as a lines written a few miles above Tintin Abbey. It's commonly known as Tintin Abbey. It has a much longer title, but in order to, for the student's sake, we have cut it short. And if you remember Tintin Abbey, and if you write in your examination like Tintin Abbey, it's enough. So when the poem first appeared in Lyrical Ballads, okay, this poem, Lyrical Ballads, was published jointly by whom? Wordsworth and his friends S.T. Coleridge in the year 1798. This is as a last minute addition. Okay, and it is both the title Lines Written or Composed a Few Miles Above Tinton Abbey on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour July 13, 1798. So, this is the actual title of the poem when it was included in the lyrical ballads. But the poet Wordsworth, he wrote the poem after visiting the ruins of the medieval abbey on the England-Wales border, and it was so pleased with it, he sent it to the publisher, his own publishers, because during those days it was very difficult to get it published, anything for that sake. So asking it to be included at the 11th hour. You know the meaning of at the 11th hour? Last minute. So in the collection of poems, he and his friend S.T. Coleridge had written. So you can read this poem, though sometimes the poet himself, he says that in the philosophy or in a book on what he has written, lyrical ballads, he says, he propounds that the poet, there should be a difference between poetic language and poetic and prosaic language, and the poet should use a simple language. But if you go through Wordsworth poems, it is very difficult to understand. He himself lacks that quality of using simple language, but it may not his problem, but it may be our problem, because he wrote all his poetry during that age. Okay, but we are reading it now. This is how difference between Hale Kannada and Nadu Kannada, and even then Hosa Kannada, right? So the diction is very, very highly, or we can say it's standard. With one reading, you cannot understand. Though, but at the same time, this is also a bit lengthy poem. Just the just like that, I just wanted to give you this poem in a capsule form. Okay. So, as the full title of Wordsworth poem, this has a lengthy title, as I have told you. He did not write this poem at Tinton Abbey, but a few miles above it. So, but even this is not quite true. Wordsworth actually wrote the poem in bustling city, although he began composing the poem in his head while still the Vivac. And he wrote it down while sitting in the parlor of his publisher, Joseph Cotley, in Bristol. Okay, imagine we can't even write a single letter or a line, or what we can say, at least half of the page when we are surrounded by people. But those were the days. That is the difference between a student or maybe an ordinary or a man and a poet. So he wrote this poem by sitting in a parlor of his publisher in Bristol. So, as Wordsworth himself later recalled, no poem of mine was composed under circumstance more pleasant for me to remember than this. I began it upon leaving a Tintern, Miss Tintern Abbey, after crossing the Wye, and concluded it just as I was entering Bristol in the evening, and after a ramble of 4 or 5 days with my sister. Who is his sister? Dorothy Wordsworth. And he writes this in his letter to his friend. Okay, how he started writing the poem, and this is the inception level. Got it? And not a line of it was altered, and not any part of that poem written down till I reached Bristol. So Wordsworth wrote this poem under this background. Hope you all understood it. And regarding the summary or analysis of the poem, we see that Wordsworth revisiting the banks of the Wye, the river that flows through England and Wales, 5 years after he was last there, and in fairly regular blank words. I'm talking about the technical aspects of the poem, and this poem is written in blank verse. Okay, Wordsworth admires the murmur of the water, the greenery of the scene, and the seclusion that such surroundings provide. So he imagines the smoke from the local cottages stems from hermits living a simple existence in the caves among the nearby woods, which means that he is in the beginning of the poem. He just tries to give us a very beautiful ambience where he could able to see the smoke, fog, and even the beautiful hermitage, greenery, the sound of the river, everything. Okay, this itself convey that definitely he is, and we all must agree him that he is a poet of nature. Nothing but nature we could find in his poem. So, in the poem's second verse paragraph or stanza, Wordsworth tells us that although it's been 5 years since he last clapped eyes on this scene, the memories of the beautiful landscape have often returned to him when he has been in busy towns and cities or sitting in lonely rooms. For example, if you had visited Missouri or some other beautiful Shimla or Ooty or so many other places known for greenery, then coming back to your city where you live, definitely you will get a wide gap, right? And some you start feeling that something is missing. The same way even Wordsworth is feeling like that. So he is pondering over the things, the scenes, the people who he had visited after 5 years ago, and he just tries to build a gap between the present and the 5 years ago. So this poem has written after 5 years of his visit to that valley. Okay, that Abbey. So the scene inspires feelings which the poet connects with small acts of love and kindness, and which can lead to a kind of tranquility, which allow us to see into the life of things, to understand things in a way we usually cannot. Am I fast? No, no. Yeah, Tintin Abbey. I'm talking about. Then the first scene in the first stanza or in the first part of the poem, because we cannot go stanza wise, it's such a lengthy poem. So I'm in order to make you understand this poem, I have divided this um, lengthy poem into certain stanzas. Then I try to convey it to you in a very simple manner. So, second paragraph or second section, it speaks of how nostalgic he becomes and how he started recollecting those things, beautiful things, what he had seen. Then the third section of the poem, we see that Wordsworth turned to the wooded area surrounding the banks of the Wye River and addresses the valley directly. Okay, the title, the name of the river is Wye, W-Y-E, Wye River, and address the valley directly, and telling it that his thoughts have often wandered to memories of it, and that too his spirit finding solace in its memory during the feverish business of living. So whenever we become dull and whenever we think that psychologically or morally we are down, we always tend to remember or recollect the beautiful moments with our friends or relatives, or even the days or beautiful memories where we spent, right? So, in the same way, even in the third section of the poem, he is recalling. So, he is thinking and he is comparing his present life with that. So, he says that those memories, which gives me a solace. By just recalling those memories, I'll get a solace like that. So, in the fourth section of the poem, Wordsworth continues to take in his surroundings, happy at the thought that as well as deriving pleasure from looking upon the landscape now, he is also storing up new visual memories of the valley, and which he will be able to recollect once he has left and to take pleasure from in the future. So he says that through his writing, one thing we can understand, he is not at all happy with urban life. Okay, and he says that you cannot compare your life with nature and your life at cities. So this is what he tries to convey through this poem. Not only this poem, but in almost this is the common factor we could find in all of his poems. So he's also storing up new visual memories, graphic memories of the valley, which he will be able to recollect once he has left that place and take pleasure uh, from in the nature. Then Wordsworth then shifts his focus to his past self, reflecting that when he first went among nature like this, and he doesn't know or he didn't know how to enjoy nature when he was budding poet. Okay, and he was a carefree boy who went eagerly to nature rather than going to it because he was fleeing from something, which means to say that the troubles of the adult world. So, however, he resists the urge to become sentimentally nostalgic or to lament his lost youth, because he reasons that he has gained things by becoming older and wiser, which means he doesn't want to grow at all. He wanted to be very innocent, right? Very, what I can say, very quiet, innocent boy rather than older and wiser man. So back then, he enjoyed nature when in his thoughtless youth. Thoughtless means carrying the suggestion of uncaring as well as unthinking or unreflective. But now it carries deeper significance because he can hear the the still sad music of humanity. Please try to quote as much as what I can say, important phrases in your answers. Okay, especially when you wish to answer the poem. Okay, poetry section. Please try to quote important phrases or words or sentences in your answers, which will add some colors to your answers. Okay. I'm not asking you to use color pen. Hope you understand what I'm saying. These are the important terms or phrases you should remember. So in this poem, I have told you important things, a few important lines, and this is also one among them. He says that he, the memories of valley and that abbey and the river, which carries deeper significance in him because he can hear the still sad music of humanity. Okay, hope you are following me. The still sad music of humanity. This is important. So, and almost oxymoronically, Wordsworth tells us that this sad quality disturbs him with the joy of elevated thoughts. And he is disturbed, but the disturbance is a welcome one, for it leads him to reflect and grow wiser. Wordsworth concludes this poem or this verse, this section, by stating that nature is like a parent or a guardian, which always protects mankind. Okay, so which also inspires him to be a very great poet, and he also says that for him, nature is the source of inspiration. And whenever his morale was down, he says, "I always look back to nature." What a very beautiful statement he makes, that nature is his parent and nature is his guardian, and it is also a source of inspiration to him. So, in the poem's final section, okay, the final section of this poem, the poet Wordsworth addresses his companion with him by the banks of the river Wye. Who is his companion? Do you think his girlfriend? No. But it is none other than his own sister, Dorothy Wordsworth. Got it? So he just wants to introduce his companion and his well wisher and his source of inspiration to the nature, that too, that is none other than his own sister, because they are brother and sister and have spent their lives together, and were looking at Dorothy reminds Wordsworth of the boy he was. And whenever he looks at her, he just recalls his childhood, boyhood, like that. So looking at Dorothy, which always he always goes reminiscent. Okay, and she is a shortcut back to his childhood, and she is always bubbling with energy. It's quite common, no? If you see someone who always laughs and who always bubbling with energy, somewhere even you also feels get charged like that. You also get charged. So for Wordsworth, his sister is like that. And Wordsworth goes on to say that nature personifies as female, and as so often in poetry is full of blessings, no matter what life may bring. So he entreats Dorothy to remember this and to remember their visit to the Wye Valley in the years to come. So this is all about the poem, and if you have any doubts regarding this, you can tell me. And it also gives us the chief differences between the earlier 18th century nature poets and the romantics like Wordsworth. Then how later, especially the Augustans, like their nature to be orderly. Okay, hedge goers, or they should be neat, like somewhat like Puritans. And this poem might be regarded as a transitional poem between earlier nature poetry of the century and the Romantic movement. Got it? This also can be considered as a transitional poem. Not only we are not talking about the technical aspect of the poem or the traditions or the difference between the era like Augustan period and the Romantic period, but even we could also find a transition in the mindset of poet. Okay, even in the poet. So even which Wordsworth also assured in his poem that even it brings him a great transition in his career, in his thinking, got it, even in his personal life. So Wordsworth may imagine that the smoke billowing, that everything he could find in nature or whatever, wherever he goes, whatever he says that everything is part of nature. Okay. Then like finally this poem, of course we have to, and this poem can be considered as a transitional poem where the poem which shows the romanticism, how romanticism emerges from earlier poetry, and which also becomes something distinctive, okay, compared to Augustine's. If you have any doubts in this, are you all with me? Only because this is the last session, have you gone out by keeping your mobile or laptop on? No, no, you're all with me. And let me move on to another important novel. What I told you, that what I wish to discuss in this session, that is the novel written by Anita Desai. The title of the novel is Where Shall We Go This Summer? And this novel I have taken from the course 5 Indian Writing in English. As you all know, you might have submitted written assignments and submitted, right? So this is the novel which appears in course 5. Okay, course 5 Indian Writing in English. Any doubts? Okay. And shall I move on to the next poem? Sorry, next topic of this session. Where shall we go this summer? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let me move on to the next important novel, which is also very important for your examination point of view, or for your examination sake. This, let me give you a brief background to Indian literature, because as of now I'm talking about the Indian. So far, I have talked about Indian poetry, but not Indian novels. And let me give you a brief introduction regarding the novels, especially Indian novels written in English. Okay, Indian literature, writings of the Indian subcontinent, produced there in a variety of vernacular languages, including Sanskrit, Prakrit, Pali, Bengali, Bihari, Gujarati, Hindi, Kannada, Kashmiri, so many languages. Okay. But especially the term Indian literature is used here to refer to literature produced across the India, especially across the Indian subcontinent, prior to the creation of the Republic of India in 1947. Okay, and within the Republic of India after 1947 also. Then after the independence, whatever we have novels or some literate what the masterpieces of literature can be figured under, or can be categorized under the post-independent era. Okay, the novels or the literature of post-independent era. So, beginning in the 19th century, particularly during the height of British control over the subcontinent, Western literary models had an impact on Indian literature. The most striking result being the introduction of the use of vernacular prose on a major scale. And such forms as the novel and short story began to be adopted by Indian writers, where we have lots of Indian writers. They started writing not only in their regional language but also in British language, English. So, a tradition of literature in English was also established in the subcontinent. The literary form of the novel, as I am talking about the novel, Indian English novel, so the literary form of the novel came to India from the West. And while it seems to be well established in all the Indian languages, the Indian novel in English wears a look of tentativeness about it. Okay, the first, at the inception level, all the literatures they started writing in their mother tongue, okay, in their regional language. Then later, only few writers like R.K. Narayan, Mulk Rajanand, Raja Rao, Kamala Markandeya, they wish to illustrate the problems of India, Indians, and Indian society. Got it through their novels, and they Indo-Andean novelist is clearly confronted with so many questions in their mind. To begin with, for whom am I writing? What should I write about? Or what is my identity? And what is the precise nature of my expression? So these are the so many things which pop up in their mind when they made up their mind to write. Okay, these are, and at the same time they just want to focus on the problems what they are facing as Indians. So while with some other writers a zealous pursuit of social problems or a thematic preoccupation is a common feature, others seem concerned with a desire to explore their own personal identity. For example, why I am stressing on identity, because Anita Desai novels always deal with identity and psychology. Okay, psychology of human being, especially of women. So finally, the Indo-Anglian novelists are aware of the need for a new English to communicate the Indian feel of their writings. So when Sarojini Naidu, just I wanted to give you an incident. I have read it somewhere. When Sarojini Naidu, she leaves for England and she wanted to write about English poetry, and that too with a foreign theme or something. But her guides or her instructors and well wishers, they instructs her, they suggest her, you should write in English. Okay, doesn't matter, but you should write about your own motherland, because the whole world doesn't know about your motherland and the problems of motherland. So it is your ardent duty to what, concentrate on or focus on your own motherland. So like that, even all other Indo-Anglian writers, they started concentrating on the theme of Indianness. Okay, Indian feeling, everything they wanted to Indianize. So How does the novel comes to the form of novel comes to India? During colonization, most of the novels were written to glorify the conquest of Europeans. Okay, no, there are many people they just want to butter. Especially they wish to be with the people who are sitting on the chair and who have power in their hands. So most of the novels, those were the days they wish to dedicate to the ruler or the queen or the king like that. Eventually, in the 20th century, some of them did show the darker side of the colonial preoccupations. Got it? Only few writers we have, they just wanted to show the dark side, which means negative side of colonial occupation. So the novel was not known in India until the 19th century. Am I fast? Hope you're all following me. Yeah. So this is because in order to understand the zone of Indian writing in English and the concept of Indianization of novel or Indianization of literature, you should know all this background. Got it. So that's what first I wish to make you to be thorough with Indian writing in English. Then later I move on to the novel form I'm discussing right now. Then how one should enter into novel form and how what was happening in 19th century. So many Indian authors try to translate the English novels, but they eventually did not enjoy doing that. Great epics were written in verse. Okay, then novels, especially novels from South India. As we know, initially the Indian authors translated Indian English, especially English novels in the native language. Chandu Menon wrote first Malayalam novel Indulekha in 1889, and Kandupuri Vireshalingam wrote the first Telugu novel Rajashekara Karitamu. Okay, Charitamu in 1878, and there are many novels in all the languages in Hindi, Bharatendra Harishchandra in Bengal, so many domestic novels like Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyaya, he wrote Durgesh Nandini, right, in 1865, and Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyaya. They're all important figures in in the during the colonized period. They wanted to write in their regional language, and they wanted to convey something, and they just wanted to pull out their artistic talent from their personality. So, as the Indian English literature has earned widespread reputation, not only in India but in abroad too, the place of Anita Desai. I'm talking about Anita Desai because today we are going to discuss the novel written by her. Where shall we go this summer? So, the place of Anita Desai among the Indo-English novelists cannot be overlooked, and she is a giant in the history of Indian English literature. So she got name, fame, everything being a writer, being an Indian writer. The Indian novels bring forth the microcosmic India caught in crucible of traditions, conventions, and social changes. Anita Desai, she added a new concept to the Indian English fiction, and her works are different from those of other Indian women writers, like I have already mentioned Kamala Markandeya, Rutu Jabwala, Nayantara Sehgal, and so on. So in Kamala Markandeya's fiction, the stress is on the rural background. Okay, in Jabwalas, as in Jabwalas, the social background is more important. And even in Sahagals, the focus is on political and social awareness. But in Desai novels, and how do we distinct or how do we differentiate Anita Desai novels among her contemporaries? So, in her novels, it is the exploration of sensibility. What sensibility? Women's sensibility, Indian sensibility, and so many such. And especially the inner workings of the mind that assume significance. And most of her novels can be categorized as domestic novels. Got it? And you may get a questions like, can you consider Where Shall We Go This Summer as a domestic novel, or as a psychological novel, or as a feminist novel, like that? So the novelists such as Anita Desai, Arun Joshi, and Jhumpa Lahiri delineate psychological conflict in their fictions because they just don't want to project the world as it is, but instead they want to go still deeper into these characters, what or whom they have projected through their novels. So these are the three important novelists. They wanted to delineate psychological conflict in their focus, especially in their fictions. In all their novels, internal conflict of characters, conflict between characters, and conflict of characters with the society is deeply portrayed. And this is what he tries to, they all of them they try to portray the conflicts within the character, the conflict between the characters, and the conflict between the society and the character. Got it? Hope you are listening to me. The internal struggle is between a character and his or her own confusion and fears and their existential quest. So all the characters in her novels or in the other novels, they always strive for identity. Got it? And they have a quest for identity. They are in search of their identity. So the internal struggle, which means the psychological struggle, internal struggle is between a character as well as in her confusion, fears, and their existence. That is very important. So external struggle is between a character and his or her societal norms, culture, and nomenclature and social setup, and it is about existentialism and, and their attempt to be true to themselves. So these are the things. This is the main foci of their of her writings, especially in the Indian English novel, and consequently how they revolt against the system and how the central characters what raise their voice against the social setup where they lived in, and especially India is what kind of a society we have in India. Though we are in a modern age or 21st century, still it is a male dominated society or a patriarchal social setup. So, man is the central or the head of the family, right? So, about the psychological conflict in human mind, one critic of she is a well-known critic of Indian writing in English, namely Usha Rani. She remarks that the psychologists believe that every individual has an intrinsic nature which is the outcome of different factors. Okay, so which is very unique, and how this writings or how the writings of Anita Desai are free of these mental agonies, because any undesired situation in the life of a man produces a psychological conflict in his mind. The protagonist means the central character as well as the narrator, one who narrates us the story. The protagonists of Desai are not free of these mental agonies, and they often come in clash with the outside life, with others at individual level, or with the society at large. And with the passage of time and experience, their mental perspective changes and it produces a psychic strain in them. So ultimately, the novel Where Shall We Go This Summer, it is replete with instances of psychological conflict. Okay, as we just two lines about the author, Anita Desai, her original name is Anita Mazumdar. Okay, she was born in 1937 in Missouri in India, and her English language is excellent, and the way she writes, the style is very quite distinct from other contemporaries at, of her. So she established herself as a very well-known Indian English novelist, and she is also author of children books who excelled in evoking character and mood through visual images ranging from the meteorological to the botanical. So, born to a German mother and a Bengali father, Anita Desai she grew up speaking many languages like German. She knew German, she knew Hindi, English. Okay, she received a BA degree from University of Delhi in 1957. Imagine the suppression and oppression of Indian women were the subject of her first novel, Cry the Peacock, 1963, and the novel which is prescribed for you, Where Shall We Go This Summer? This was published in 1975, and Fire on the Mountain, 1977, The Clear Light of Day, which was published in 1980. These are the important works by Anita Desai, and even Gardner Bombay, something that is another novel which was published in 1988. and another very important novel by her, In Custody, okay, which was filmed later. Which was filmed, which was published in 1984. Okay, it was made as a film in 1994, and Journey to Ithaca, published in 1995, and Fasting and Feasting, published in 1998. Sorry, 1999. So there are many novels, and uh, because of her. As I have told you, she is a giant in the history of Indian writing in English. This novel can be marked as a very remarkable and classic novel. And at the same time, this particular writer, she is interested in the psychic life of her characters, and her novels reveal that her real concern is with the exploration of human psyche. Why I am telling you all these things? Because I told you, can you consider, if you get a question like, can you consider where shall we go this summer as a psychological novel, then you have to write all these things and how the writer writes this, and what was the background, and what was the interested area of the writer. So how does she puts forth all these things through her novel. So, as the writer herself, or as the novelist herself, is interested in the psychic life of her character, or she wanted to delineate the psychological conflict of her characters, this is very important, main foci of all of her novels. So, especially her fourth novel, Where Shall We Go This Summer, which brings forth the agonized self and feminine sensitivity of the protagonist, Sita. You might have read, many of you might have read it, or you might have written an assignment on this. So this is very important, and the character Sita is also very important. This Sita is a typical Indian woman, right? And how, though she has so many conflicts in her mind and in her life, she doesn't want to exhibit or pour it out openly. Instead, she suffers and struggles. That's what I told you. This is somewhat like a novel of a psychological conflict and agonized self and a feminine sensitivity of the protagonist. So feminism, as you all know, feminism is a worldwide cultural movement. And even if you go to next year, right, in your second year, you are going to study all these theories, feminism. So we are living in the fourth wave feminism now. Okay, in the world of fourth wave feminism. Feminism is a worldwide cultural movement to secure a complete equality of women, with men in the enjoyment of all human rights, moral rights, religious, cultural, social, political, educational, legal, and economic, and so on. So it means a sense of personal courage. The feminist consciousness or sensitivity is the consciousness of the victimization. And as I told you, that though we are living in a patriarchal social setup, but still we have at least some liberty to enjoy, right? But compared to our what forefathers or foremothers, right? So grandparents like that. So the feminist consciousness is very important. How a woman become victimized of the societal norms and culture, like that. So as a philosophy of life, it seeks to discover and change the more subtle, sensitive, and deep-seated causes of women's oppression. So this novel, it clearly opposes women's subordination to men in the family and society. It is a global and revolutionary ideology. But though we say that it is a patriarchal social setup we are living in, but some household, actually, who is the boss? Fortunately, in some houses, women will be the boss, right? And so, only for namesake, it says that it is patriarchal social setup, and more than bossism, one should have understanding, right, between men and women. That is also very important in the family life and domestic life. So it is a global and revolutionary ideology. A feminist is one who is awakened and conscious about women's life and problems. So the now women novelists and poets such as Anita Desai, Shashi Deshpande, Jai Nimkar, and poets like Kamala Das, Gauri Deshpande, and others, they have raised the voice against women's oppression. through their writings. And Anita Desai, she has written by and large about women characters, and she is preoccupied with the theme of incompatible marital couples. Okay, so even here in this novel, in this novel also, this novel presents an incompatible marital relationship in the form of Raman and Sita. These are the two important characters we have in this novel. Um as it's time, let me discuss. I think hope you have all of you have understood the background and the psychological quest, or the background of the author, background of the Indian writing in English, the form of a novel, how it entered, and even how does she explore the psychological insight of her or agonized self in her novels. In my next class, I'll discuss the story of the novel, important theme of the novel, and the characterization of Sita. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. I think you are completely tired because this is the sixth hour, right? Sitting before the system and listening to the continuous lecture series. I can understand. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Any doubts? Were you all with me throughout my lecture? Questions asked in internal assessment exam. No, no, no. You won't get questions what you were asked to write in your examination, especially IA, in your assignment, because by keeping those IA questions only will we look into that. It should not repeat in your examination, but you can you can be thorough with your answers because you know no you have how you have written and the story of the story or the concept on which you have written in your assignments, so that it would be helpful for you to prepare yourself for the examinations. Yeah, I could be able to get only messages saying that what I can say, good afternoon, ma'am, or good morning, ma'am. Then at the end of my lecture, thank you, ma'am. Hope are you all listening to me, or I don't think, or are you all scared to ask me so many questions? If you are, I'm very happy to receive questions from you all because it should be a two-way. First of all, we are deprived of conducting offline classes, which would be more interesting, but what to do due to this pandemic, even we can't blame the system. Uh, and even if you come up with questions or queries, it would be very interesting and even which can be add some colors to our lecture. Yeah, thank you, Geeta Bhagi ma'am, and everyone for your patient listening. And thank you for all of you because I know the hardship of sitting before the system for a long hours, but still, you are all of you are really the people who have so much of patience. Yeah, good. In my next class, I'll continue with the same novel. Okay, don't worry. And if you have, please read the novel and come. Then only it could be very nice, no? And it will, which will be interesting to know the story or to know. Only if you go through the novel, then only you can understand what I am talking about or what I'm going to delineate through my in my lecture. Thank you all. Have a nice day. To found your efforts great to do pre and post session of yours were very interesting with clarity. Mm.